love when robots talk to you in public.
Wait till they walk up to you in public. Then you're gonna really be shocked. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, come dive into the open minds, expand your horizons, broaden your perspectives, and open your eyes to a reality never thought possible. Just remember, once you open that door, there's no going back. I'm your host, Robbie Diesel.
That.
I'm your host, Robbie Diesel, and this is the Open Mind Show. And this is the very first episode. So if you're tuning in, I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Tonight's episode, The Buddhist, with my guest, Will Cosgrove, aka Hard Drive. How you doing tonight, man?
Oh, I'm pretty damn good, bro.
Welcome to the show.
I shouldn't be cussing. I'm trying to stop cussing.
Are you? Are you on something to that? Okay.
I am. Not for any really good reason, just to see if I can, because I just built up this habit of constantly putting expletives in front of everything as if it will accentuate the sentence somehow.
Oh, I call them sentence enhancers. I love it. Yeah, that's like my second language.
But I'm representing the Buddha tonight. So
there you go. All right, I respect it. And I like it. So you have a Buddhist name, is that correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. What is that Buddhist name?
Pema Dechen.
Pema Dechen.
Pema Dechen. It means lotus of great bliss.
Lotus of great bliss.
So just like Grandmaster Flash, just like all the great rappers throughout space and time, they all took on a different name, different persona to bring themselves further into that identity. The same thing as when you're a Buddhist, is you take on a new name and you enter the path with a new identity. So that's kind of what it's like. So there's so many parallels between rap and Buddhism, bro. I swear.
Rap came from life, so you got to figure. I mean, music came from life in general, so that makes sense. But so is that something that everybody that you are trying to get everybody to call you now, or?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I honestly don't know that many people, so whatever anybody wants.
How do you get your Buddhist name?
My Lama named me that.
Okay.
I'm a part of the Tibetan tradition. So when there's a thing called taking refuge, where you take refuge with the Buddha, and I guess I'll get into that a little bit later. So when you have that certain ceremony, it becomes official, and so that's how you really become a Buddhist. Is you take on the task of applying the teachings of the Buddha in a direct and deliberate way. So that's when he gives you a new name.
Okay.
So I just walked up. I'm like, "What is it?" And he's like, "Whoop!" Wrote it down, handed me the little card with the name on it. I was like,
that quick?
Yeah.
That's just how it was. Did he tell you why he gave you that name?
No. He doesn't speak English. He doesn't speak English that well.
Really?
So yeah, he just came from Tibet. He was trained in Tibet.
Okay.
He's like a dinosaur, like one of the rare ones.
Right.
There's a lot of Tibetans in Tibet, but there's only so many. Obviously,
right.
but there's only so many Tibetans that were trained in Tibet at a large monastery, and then went through the whole process of years and years and years of cultivating their abilities for teaching and training. And
sounds kind of like when martial arts came to the United States.
Yeah,
everybody did martial arts over in Asia, but there was only a few people that came here and did it.
Yeah,
and I think they were tabooed from the culture for doing it too. I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Absolutely. Americans didn't deserve that shit.
Right.
Oh, goddamn. Keep fucking cussing. So yeah, even in, martial arts is a Buddhist tradition. It came from the Shaolin Temple in Song Mountain in China.
Well, I just learned something new right there.
Yeah. Which it actually came from India. So Kung Fu was not a Chinese martial art. It's an Indian martial art. In India, it was called Kalari. And then the great Indian prince, who was a great Buddhist master, came to China. His name was Bodhidharma, and he brought Kung Fu with him, and taught them the art of Kung Fu.
Wow, that's cool. So what is Buddhism? Is it a religion? Is it spirituality? Is it something that you do in your spare time? What is it?
So I was thinking about this from our last conversation, and so there's always a problem in translating the aspects of one culture to another. Is that a culture will have words for something that don't exist in the other culture. And so in ancient India, there was no such word as religion. It wasn't a thing. There was there's contemplative arts, there was science, there was philosophy, there was ethics, but there was no such thing as religion, where it's like a belief system where like this is your thing and this is what I'm called and you can take it or leave it type of thing. So it was like there's all different philosophical schools that all looked at reality from different perspectives and then tried to basically nail it down. And so Buddhism comes out of that ancient Indian tradition, where Hinduism comes out of. There's also Sikhism. Uh, uh, there's all types of Hinduism, but there's the Jains, there's the Buddhists, and then also in India now there's Christian and Islam as well. So Buddhism, I break it down into 4 parts. It's a religion. Yes, it has religious aspects of it, where you have faith in maybe something you don't quite understand, but you would like to understand sooner or later. There's, and you sometimes you shave your head and wear funny clothes. I got these beads that my teacher gave me. So there's all these little, you light candles and incense and you pray and do chanting. And basically it can be a religious practice for people that don't quite understand it. That maybe you don't have the time to study it. Maybe you don't have the ability or the access to the type of information to be really sharp as a tack and to know what it is. And in which case, and that really what happens in most Asian countries, like most of Thailand, most of China, most of even Japan, you ask them, what is Buddhism? And they're like, oh, it's my religion. Well, like, what is it? You're like, oh, we pray to Buddha. And then that's as far as they take it, because essentially people are just busy and they don't just don't look stuff up. And so there's that aspect of it. I call it, okay, not just me, but there's a thing called Buddhist psychology, where it's the way that the Buddhists understand the mind, the human mind, and the way that the mind interacts with phenomenal reality and the way that minds interact with each other. And so in Buddhism, what we have is called an intersubjective reality, where each person has their own sense of subjectivity, like their own mind stream, their own consciousness that they're kind of stuck with, that they have to deal with. And then everybody else has theirs. And then we all kind of meet up and then convene and spew words out of our mouth, and then sometimes our words line up and sometimes they don't. And so there's the whole study of that, the whole way that kind of the mind creates reality, the language creates reality, that our perceptions create reality, and the way our concepts create reality. And
that all has to do with Buddhism.
That has to do, yeah, absolutely. It's 100% central. That's why it's more psychology than anything else, because what we're dealing with is essentially the main tenet of Buddhism is that there is suffering in this world, that sometimes in people's lives, moment to moment, there's fluctuations, and sometimes it really sucks. Sometimes it's so horrible that you might put a gun in your mouth and just pull the trigger. Is life worth living? Should I blast myself? Every morning I ask myself, that's what Pac said. That's a great philosophical question.
Absolutely.
So in that, and so to deal with the suffering, you have to understand the mind. To deal with reality, you have to understand the way that the mind creates reality. And so in modern science, and even in most psychology nowadays, like Western psychology, they call it behaviorism. And so they don't understand consciousness. They don't understand the mind. They don't understand where thoughts come from. They don't understand the basic nature of reality.
Well, so it's almost like a conceptual programming.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you could put that to life. I'm not saying Buddhism. I'm saying just life in general is that from the time you're born, I'm 31. So up until now, my life has been, you could almost call it trained into a program on how to handle reality, how to handle situations, how to handle life. Right.
Exactly.
Right? So it almost sounds like Buddhism is like a more enlightened or a higher form of that.
So my little like quote, or like my little idiom that I like to say is Buddhism is universal deprogramming. So whatever programming that you got going, Buddhism is there to flip that script. Essentially.
I like that.
So in Western psychology, we say, oh, it's behaviorism. It's like, oh, this person's acting crazy because something's wrong with his brain. Mm-hmm. He's got some type of chemical ain't getting where it's supposed to be. And so he's acting all twacked out. And Buddhism is here to say that it's absolutely not so simple as to say that you can just take some type of pill and you can fix yourself. And in fact,
I've never agreed with that.
Yeah. And in fact, there's more Americans are taking pills than ever, and suicide is at an all-time high. Depression is at an all-time high. And we've been doing this behavioral take a pill psychology for the last 20 years, and it's gotten us absolutely nowhere.
Yep.
So neurology, neuroscience, I'm not a neuroscientist.
Right.
Not here to down talk on science and, because I'm an idiot. But essentially, you can just look at the way that we are and the way that we behave, and something's not clicking.
Absolutely.
The puzzle pieces are not falling where they should. And so there's the psychological aspect of it is there's something wrong, essentially. And we're going to get into this later about like in the nature of reality, like what is wrong,
right?
Like what actually is our dysfunction. And so there's Buddhism is called it's called a medicine. And so we got a sickness, we have mental illness, we are mentally unstable, mentally unhealthy, and there's prescriptions for this. And you can take this prescription like a doctor would prescribe you a prescription, and you can try it for yourself, and it might work. Maybe you need to try something else. But if you don't even try it, if you don't even take the medicine, it's nothing the psychologist can do for you.
So you writing scripts for Buddhism?
Yeah. No. I'm way too stupid for that. There's so many.
I like it though. I like it. I can respect it.
And so when you get to the fundamental nature of reality, that's when you get the philosophical aspect of it. Because throughout all of Buddhist history, what you get is these ridiculously smart Buddhist psychologists that like, I don't know if you've ever like read like the Constitution or like legal documents where you're reading it and it's just like what, where you're like, what are you saying? And it's just like, so because they have to talk like that, because that's like the way you be is exactly specific.
It sounds like it's specifically made for guys like me and you not to understand.
Exactly. So that's what Buddhist psychology is like. Okay. So there's dudes like Dharmakirti, Dignaga, Chandrakirti, Aryadeva. And so all of these Buddhist philosophers, they write all this stuff like, this is what's going on. Like, this is how we are. This is what reality is. This is what logic is. This is what reasoning is.
It's probably a mind fuck.
It's a mind fuck.
Yeah.
In it, because and really that's honestly where the praying and the religious aspect of it comes in. Because they say you need a thing called merits or blessings to even understand it. So you light candles, you light incense, you make prayers. You're like, oh, please, may I understand this someday? Because it sounds like you guys are hitting the nail on the head. And so, and for me, it actually has worked out that way, where I read these things and there's nothing that I don't understand in it anymore. But essentially, it's like going from preschool to a PhD in physics.
Wow.
Where you can get like a PhD in Buddhist studies at Harvard or Stanford or something.
Oh,
like
I'm sure they have it for all religions.
It's a real academic discipline. It's not like airy-fairy spirituality of just like,
right.
Oh man, it's just like one, man. Like it's deep shit. So
right.
And so
how long have you been practicing this?
Like 7 years.
7 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like seriously, like maybe like in the first 2 years, I was just kind of like, you open these books, you open these things, and you hear these teachings and like these masters and these lectures, and it just kind of like washes over you. You're like, oh my God, like, what did I just hear? And it makes you feel good, and you're like, but you can't even like grasp it.
Well, it's like a baby learning how to walk.
Yeah,
especially
it really
for
is.
Anything new, yeah.
So for the first 2 years, I just knew, I was like, this is way over my head. But at the same time, like I grew up in a Buddhist temple. I grew up in the Japanese community. So I already I knew that it was my thing, because it was always been my thing. Because people would ask you like, oh, what are you? Like a Christian or an atheist? I'm like, oh, I'm a Buddhist.
So your parents were Buddhist?
Yeah. Well, my dad's Presbyterian. My mom grew up in a Catholic school. And and so they're uber Christian. So I always had like this Christian upbringing where I would like have like Bible books in the house. I'd always be reading Bible stories. And so I had that kind of a relationship with God where I'm like, God, like, what's up, man? Like, what are you doing? Like kind of just like an abusive relationship with God where I would just like blame him for everything.
Oh yeah. I had the 911 God. It's like when everything went wrong, like I promise I'll never do it again. Just let me get through this.
Dude, like I would like during the 2000 two season of the Kings, I'd be like those last few minutes, I'd be like, God, please,
Dude.
God.
I stopped watching basketball for like almost 10 years because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking Robert Ory. The goddamn shot that he made.
More
just
like the
ruined my
ref.
life.
More
Yeah,
like
I
the
was like,
ref.
that game is over. I was like, there's no God.
Yeah.
These Lakers, they cheated. What kind of God would let this happen?
Right.
But so it was my thing. So I would always call myself a Buddhist. And so when I really started reading into it, I was like, oh, I want to be a real Buddhist. I don't want to be just like a
half stepping.
I don't want to be, I don't want to be a dilettante. I don't want to be like faking the funk. I don't, I want to really know what it is. But when you take that attitude, then you start reading, you're like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Because
like the saying goes, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. You just might get it.
Yeah.
And if you get it, then you just might. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. So so it requires that you study. It requires, like, essentially they say better ethics than a normal person. Like, most people are pretty cool. Like, there's not like too many insane people walking around. Mm-hmm. There's like actually quite a bit, but I'd say it's like 80-20 of like normal, like pretty cool people to like psychopaths. And then the Buddhists say that you have to be better than all of them. Like, you have to get your ducks in a row. You have to stop, abusing yourself and others. And so there's that whole like foundational aspect of it. And then they say, and then you got to sit a lot. You have to sit so long that your legs hurt and your back hurts and your mind hurts and you're super bored and you're wondering why you're even doing this. And then you might actually start getting somewhere. And then there's like the full whole actual understanding aspect of it, of like, are you actually, can you read the words? Do you know what the words mean? And then do you actually know what the words are talking about? And so
wait, so they have you sit until your legs, back, and head hurts.
Yeah, neck.
How long have you sat before?
In like the full lotus position where you have both the legs going like this, I could probably sit for like an hour and a half. Okay. And then just regular sitting of just like not trying to do anything extreme, I can sit for like a long time, like hours and hours. Like,
so what are you guys doing when you're sitting like this?
Oh, lots of stuff. There's lots and lots of very beginning I can't even get into the like what you actually do on the cushion.
Okay.
Because for that you kind of need a teacher to tell you, to look at you, talk to you, find out where you're at, tell you what you need to be doing. Assessment. Because it's not one size fits all at all for anything in Buddhism. Every single person has their own ish going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So everybody's got their own mental illness with their own prescription.
So it sounds kind of like it's a breakdown for the buildup. Yeah. Like you said, it's a deprogramming. Yeah. Starting with a clean slate.
So like Buddhism in India in the time of the Buddha, when he became the Buddha and became enlightened and decided to go out and start teaching people how to become enlightened, every story that comes out of that is somebody would walk up to the Buddha with some sort of problem. And they'd be like, Buddha, what about this? Or like, this is why you're stupid, Buddha. Or like, this is why you're not enlightened. And then this is what really is going on. And then the Buddha would be like, all right, okay. Then they'll take their line of reasoning and kind of work it out to its ultimate culmination. And then the Buddha would be like, and that's why this is ridiculous. So this is what you really need to do, which is put down all your confusions and actually meditate and get rid of what they call your 3 mental poisons, which are greed or grasping, and hatred or malignancy, aggression, just general sort of like anger. Right. So it's greed, anger, and then ignorance, which is the delusion of, and the delusion, that's a whole, I can't just get in delusion right now, because that's the philosophical aspect of the fundamental nature of reality, which is not something you can just say what it is real quick. Right. I mean, I can, but it would just be like gibberish.
Right.
But
so who is Buddha?
Buddha was the guy. See, this is already philosophical. So Buddha was a man.
You got to.
The Buddha was a title that I don't know if he called himself Buddha. So Buddha just means one who is awake. And so everybody talks about wokeness. Like everyone's like, oh, you're awake.
I'm woke.
Woke, son. So the original woke warrior was the Buddha, because he awakened. And so awake as opposed to what? As opposed to asleep.
Right.
And so when you're asleep, what are you doing? You're either totally unconscious, like totally not even aware that anything's going on at all, that you even are a being, or you're in this dream reality where all kinds of crazy stuff's going on, and essentially you're insane when you're in a dream because all kinds of weirdness and people and things are happening and none of it's ever weird to you.
Sometimes with no control,
No,
sometimes with
yeah,
all the control. It's weird.
yeah, yeah. And so in a dream, not only do you not think that anything's weird, but you also don't know that you're dreaming unless you become lucidly awake within the dream.
Right.
And so Buddha became lucid within the awakened, the awake state of not dreaming, but also Buddha would say that we're all asleep. He said we are all dreaming. We're all in this delusional kind of fake, false, seems like it's real reality
Wow.
that is essentially created from our concepts.
That
From
brings
our,
up so many other topics and questions and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. And so the Buddha was a man. He was a guy. He was a prince from a country called Magadha, and he was what's called a wheel turning king, in which means that in India at the time, this is even pre-Alexander.
Okay.
So ancient India. I got this fly flying around me. So in ancient India, he was part of what's called the Shakya clan, and it's northern India, and it was a group of brothers that all had their own kingdom. So they had this massive territory in northern India, and each brother had their own family, and his father was named King Suddhodana, and he had a son named Prince Siddhartha Gautama of the Shakya clan. This kid Siddhartha was a crazy, like dope kid. He was super tall, super handsome, super smart, super athletic, like essentially Michael Jordan of his time,
Mm-hmm.
and just surpassed everybody like fundamentally. And so it was predicted at the time of his birth that he would either become ruler of the whole world, meaning like, so because in India they had like spiritual seekers, they had fortune tellers, they had psychics, they had all this type of thing. And so somebody like a wise man, like a Brahmin, like a minister, saw this kid as soon as he was born. He's like, oh, this kid's either going to be ruler of all planet Earth, or he's going to be a perfectly enlightened being, and he's going to teach people how to become enlightened like him. And so the king, wanting him to be his successor, he's like, oh, sweet, I'm king of this little country. My son's going to be king of the world. Good
Right.
on me. Good on me. That sounds great. So whatever that holy man
There's
stuff
that
is,
greed you're talking about.
yeah, it's like he wanted his own self benefit because he really didn't understand what a holy being is.
Right.
Like they had them, but it wasn't like a Buddha. And
Right.
so Buddha, he was kept in the castle, kept in the palace, was never allowed to see the outside. He was like trained up to be a king, and he essentially, the first time that he ever went outside the palace, what he saw first was an old man, and then he saw a sick man, and then he saw a body, and he was like, what the hell is this? And then his like ministers, like his homies, were like, oh dude, that's what happens to everyone. We all get old, we all get sick, and we all die. And that's the way it is. He's like, what? Why? And they were like, I don't know, fool. And then he's like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, you don't want to find out? And they're like, yeah, I guess you could find out, but we're like royalty. He's like, if you like, that's what all like the poor people do, is they go like meditate and like try to be enlightened, but that's all nonsense. And he's like, I don't think that's nonsense. And so he left the palace, and he found like a community, or like he saw people meditating, and it was a thing at the time called the shramana, and it's where you shave your head, you wear the robe, and you go beg for food, and you go and you meditate, and you do yoga.
Beg for food?
Yeah, you don't ask
What's
for
the
anything.
significance of that?
It's so that other people can generate generosity.
Oh, okay.
Because in
Okay.
India at the time, it was generally not amongst the royalty, but it was respected amongst the general population that if a person is like a holy man, he's trying to seek peace. He's trying to seek a better way of life. And they supported
I've never heard
that.
of the begging for food, but what you kind of just described sounds like a monk.
A Christian monk.
Okay.
So a monk is a Christian term, and that's and it's basically the same thing. But in Buddhism, it's called a bhikshu, and so he became a bhikshu, like they called a mendicant, an ascetic, somebody who leaves the home.
Mhm.
So you no longer participate in normal society and you devote your life to spiritual practice. And so he
Okay.
decided to go do that. And in India at the time, they had all like the philosophical systems of ancient India, which are hard and complicated, hard to get into, but it's basically just like Hinduism, kind of like Hinduism, like the way it is now is like a kind of a more recent development based on essentially the insights of the Buddha. That's like a argument.
Right.
But so he went around and he tried everything. He went to all of the great masters at the time and said, "What do you got to teach?" And then they're like, "Oh, well, this is what you do, and then this is what enlightenment is." And so he did these things, reached these high states of enlightenment where he felt all this bliss, felt like he disappeared, felt like he was like floating on a rainbow like this, and then eventually came back to it. And then he'd been like sitting on the ground for like a week, and his whole body was just
Wow.
like in pain. He was like, "Oh my God, like where did that blissful feeling go?" And then they would be like, "Well, that's enlightenment." And then he's like, "What?" And he's like, "That's not it." And then so he essentially he bested all of the great teachers at the time.
Uh-huh.
And then finally he was like, "I know what to do. I'm just gonna not eat until I attain enlightenment." And that's the way to do it, because they had this theory that the body is what is stopping the soul or the spirit from being like liberated. It's called moksha.
Or
And so,
free.
or free. And so he's like, so you weaken the body and then it frees the soul. And so he starved himself. And this is all in the text and the sutras. There's all these like, there's even these statues of the Buddha where he's like a skinny skeleton. You ever seen these things?
Wow.
And so
Only Buddha statues I've seen are when he's fat.
oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a whole Chinese thing. That's another avenue.
Okay.
That's centuries down the road. It's Buddhist, but it's like another thing. And
Okay.
so what he did eventually is he realized that starving yourself is stupid, and he almost died doing it. And so then he essentially figured out, and this like, so what he did is he realized the middle way. What he realized is that indulgence and sensorial pleasure brings no benefit.
Right.
And so, which is what he was doing in the palace. Starving yourself doesn't bring enlightenment. So there also has to be some middle path where you're not overtly indulging in sensorial pleasures, but you're also not torturing yourself. And so when he found this middle way, what he actually discovered was calm peace of mind, which is like a type of spiritual technology called shamatha. And so what it is, it's a highly advanced, highly developed cognitive ability with which you can use your mind to study the nature of reality, to study the nature of your own being, which essentially is not what the Hindus were trying to do at the time. They were just trying to they were trying to conk out. They were trying to just like erase themselves, zap themselves out, so they don't essentially anesthetize themselves, so they don't have to feel things anymore.
Right.
That's what they really thought was going on.
Desensitize.
Yeah, like all feelings are bad. Therefore, so Buddha then essentially he used this hyper like concentrated type of awareness to then investigate reality, and what he discovered was a thing called emptiness. And this is another type. We should get to this emptiness later. That's another type of philosophical avenue to go down. And so essentially he used this type of meditation that he discovered to become the Buddha. And so what the Buddha discovered about himself is that he is everything. So the Buddha is not only you, the Buddha is me,
Mm-hmm.
the Buddha is planet Earth,
Mm-hmm.
the Buddha is the stars and the galaxies, the Buddha is wind, fire, water, earth, the Buddha is space, and the Buddha is the mind.
And so Buddha's a god.
Buddha's like God, if that's what you think God is.
Right.
Because obviously there's a whole avenue of theism that
says, you could argue with 20 people and it might be a different perspective on what God is.
Because there's like a saying in Christianity that says the absolute otherness of God, that God is created. We're not God, obviously, because we sin and God is sinless. Right. But God's the creator. But there's the avenue of theism that says, no, it's like omnitheism of like everything is God, including you and me. And that's what Buddha discovered. The Buddha discovered he's everyone. Because really,
so it's kind of like an interconnectedness.
The interconnectedness of all things.
With us and everything else. Yeah.
That's what the Buddha discovered.
Go ahead.
Oh, so I was going to say, so right now when we're talking about it, this is a conceptual understanding of it. Like it makes sense
Right.
that obviously we're part of the earth. We breathe the same air. We drink the same water. Fire is just fire anywhere it goes. You know what I'm saying? You light one candle and then you use that flame and you light another candle.
Right.
You blow that flame out and then this is still just fire. It's not the
Right.
same flame, but it's also not a different flame.
Mhm.
And so Buddha kind of understood that, like, so us conceptually can understand that, but it said that Buddha had direct perception of this. And this is where this idea of an omniscient mind comes in. So the Buddha saw basically everything. So in my latest podcast called What is a Buddha, I kind of talk about like at length of what omniscience is. And so Buddha essentially, with his super hyper powerful mind, he can, like, he saw in all three times, past, present, future. He saw everyone's perspectives of, like, he basically sees reality from inside of our bodies,
Like an
and
out of body experience almost.
but like times infinite though.
Okay.
Times everything.
Okay.
And so in logically it makes sense that you can see and know everything because you are everything.
Right. You're tapped
So
in.
you're tapped in,
Mhm.
fully tapped in.
Yeah.
And so what's freaky about this is that the scriptures that came, so that's a pretty gnarly concept. Like that's a dope idea of like, damn, somebody that knows everything.
Right.
Like what would that even like look like or sound like?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Because I wouldn't know.
like how would this fool act? And so
Mhm.
when you read the text of the Buddha, he taught for 45 years after he became the Buddha. He died at 80 years old. And essentially what you get out of Buddhism sounds like somebody that knows everything.
Right.
It's pretty fun. Like, not to hate on Christianity, but you know, I'm like, I guess I'm promoting my own deal. Like the New Testament, it's like 250 pages. And then Old Testament, like besides like the Torah and I'm sorry, I forget what the other book is, but it's not that much.
Mhm.
It's like maybe like it's like a 500-page book. Like
Right.
the Buddha gave over 2,700 discourses in his
Wow.
lifetime. And some of these discourses are like 40 volumes long.
The
Some
one
of-
guy who lived to 80 did all this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because all he did was teach.
He devoted his life.
Devoted. So the moment he got up from under the Bodhi tree and from out of that meditation, he went and found 5 homies that he was like practicing with before, who had actually left him because he decided to start eating food. And
Right.
they thought that was weak sauce.
Ah.
And then he taught them, he's like, this is what it is. And they were like, oh, damn. And then they became enlightened. And they said at the end of his life, he had 1,252 perfected disciples, essentially disciples that attained enlightenment, almost pretty damn close to what he had attained. And then they said spread out, like each disciple went to a whole different part of India and then taught. And so at one point, Buddhism, for like a nice 1,000 years, Buddhism was all throughout Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, India, Japan, China, Southeast Asia, Bhutan, Nepal. Like it taken over all of Asia, and it was the main thing.
So he had disciples too. I mean, this kind of sounds or correlates with any other religion almost.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Every great holy man. Yeah.
Right.
Every great holy man, you know, has something to say. He gets his message across to the people and the people carry it forward.
Right.
But essentially the difference between what Buddha did and what the other sort of religions are is that because the Buddha was trained as a king, he was trained as a general of an army. So he knew how to organize shit. He was already like primed to take over a whole country. So when he decided to establish his group, he's like, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to look. This is what we're going to teach. And this is how we're going to approach the world and how we're going to behave. And you can either get in or you can dip off. And it actually had results. And it actually was like this incredible institution that just like caught like wildfire and totally shifted all of India because India was like this caste system. You heard of caste system?
Mm-mm.
It's like the low caste is like the super poor people. And then at the top is the kings.
Okay.
So it's this hierarchical structure of essentially just super racist. Like all the brown people were the slaves. And then in northern India, you would have like the Aryans actually come from this type of like looking at society. It's the Aryans. Nobody knows what an Aryan is. It's such an old thing. Like the white people are not the Aryans. I'll tell you that right now. But they're
Right.
like, it's like the North. It's like a very stupid thing that Hitler came up with. But
Mhm.
so like the Northern India was like, they were taller and they were like lighter skin. And then Southern India, they were like brown and they were like lower caste. And so it was like this dominant way of running society. And so the Buddha totally flipped that on its head. And he took anybody from any caste, anybody that was just sincere and wanted to attain enlightenment, you came to the Buddha and he taught you. Or after he passed away, you came to the Sangha. And so that's every society. Every society is a caste system. In America, what do we have? We have drug addicts, we have prisoners, and we have gang members as the lowest caste. You know what I'm saying? And then we have our blue collar, which is like our middle caste. And then at the top, we have our lawyers, we have our doctors, or like near the top. In the very, very top, we have our financial fucks that dominate us. And so, the Buddha, but in India at the time, it was more rigid. And it wasn't like based on economics. It was based on skin color and family descent. And so it was really just like locked in a position. So
if you're poor, you're poor.
You're poor.
If you're not, you're not. Yeah.
That's it.
There ain't no opportunity or anything like that, right?
You don't even talk to a person of the lower caste. Not even close. And
so are there different forms of Buddhism?
Yeah. So when the different individuals left, the central area of Buddhism, which is basically India, and they traveled out to all these regions of the world, they came to these regions with the original teachings, but because the people of the regions had their own like tendencies, they had their own cultures, they had their own habits and their own like their own neuroses, their own weirdnesses. Like the Chinese people are like, not to be, not stereotypical, but they're kind of like cloistered. They're really proper. They're really like rigid in their ways. And then the Japanese people are super prideful. I'm Japanese, so I can say this, but they're super prideful.
It's like I can say this.
Yeah.
Full disclaimer.
And then so the Tibetans, they were like super violent and then like super arrogant and like full of themselves. And so each of these great masters came to this country and and Buddhism had to morph. It had to like form to the population that it was in so it could serve the needs of the people, because no Buddhist group ever lost the essence of the teaching of like what it is you're supposed to do as a Buddhist, which is
they kind of just added their own little sauce to the mix.
Exactly.
So I take it it's probably regional from when it spread and how they do it.
And every region already had their local religion. So China had Taoism. In Tibet, it was called Bun. In India, it was like Vedism. And then in Japan, it was Shintoism. And I really don't know much about Southeast Asia, but there was something going on there before Buddhism came along there. So everywhere Buddhism has ever gone, it's always been this alien sort of force of these like orange robed bald guys that just like kind of come in and they just like talk to everybody. And then everyone's like the rich people freak out and they're like, no, like they see their like grip on the population slipping. And so Buddhism has always had this like tense relationship with local cultures everywhere it goes. And so now Buddhism is in America.
Right.
So it's 2,600-year-old tradition. And it's been in America for about 120 years. Wow. My temple in Sacramento was the second temple in the United States.
Wow.
Because it came over from Japan. And so the first one was San Francisco, the second one was Sacramento, and it was started in 18. And so it hasn't been here very long. And so now Buddhism is dealing with a whole new culture, and America is a motherfucker. Like we're all kinds of crazy. Like we got
materialistic, we're greedy, crazy
materialistic, but also crazy smart. We're like super scientists. We're super deep into advertising, super deep into materialism. We got great music. I was just listening to Eurovision. It's like, it's this like European song contest. It was hilarious. So like America is killing it in a lot of different ways, but at the same time, we're super neurotic. We're super depressed. We have like this like self-loathing that like kind of comes from Christianity, but it also comes from like our materialistic and like just the way that like science looks at the human being is that we're just like this crappy animal that like
Right.
that just like just can't seem to just like act like a computer.
So
Like
that so to back up, the temple in Sacramento was the second temple in America.
in
Period.
America, in all
Oh, okay.
in either North or South America.
Wow.
So this whole region of land the Buddhism had never touched it before, and the Japanese were the first ones here. It
And
was actually
is that where you go often?
I haven't been there. Well, not for a year.
Oh, well, there's
Obviously,
not like regular services or
there is, but they got shut down.
oh, well, the COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
I actually, that's what I grew up in. That's like my blood. That's my heart.
okay.
That's like my thing is the Japanese like tradition, especially Zen, but also this is called Pure Land Buddhism. It's like my home. But I've gotten into Tibetan Buddhism because it's so gnarly.
That's the form that you practice.
That's the form that I practice.
Okay.
Because you got to pick one.
Right.
You can't just smorgasbord.
Well, that's
like
what Buddha
Buddhism.
did.
But that's what that's what he can do whatever he wants, man.
Right. So what's your ultimate goal with this though? I mean, it's a religion, so it's something you're obviously want to do for the rest of your life. For you, it's a religion, correct?
Yeah. So there's all different kinds. So of course I want to attain enlightenment. I don't want just like I don't want a weak little enlightenment. I want the whole shebang. I don't want to like be like a Buddhist celebrity. I don't want to like write a bunch of books or whatever. I want like actual enlightenment. Because like there's a great Indian philosopher named Krishnamurti. He was like, how do you know if you want to be enlightened if you don't even know what it is, since you're not enlightened? And so I was like, yeah, it's a pretty good point. Like, man, it's because people love shitting on Buddhism, but I've read enough about it, and I've read enough stories of these enlightened masters, these enlightened beings. I've met some of them, have had weird things happen to me where I'm pretty like 99.99% there of like, this is real. It's possible. It's within my grasp, and I'm going to go for it.
It's giving you a taste of, hey, you could do this.
Yeah. I've had some taste. Nothing, no, like spiritual lights. I've never levitated. I've never but the teachings, what they tell you to do when you meditate, you always start with just a scattered mind. You're just like all fucked up. You're just like questioning yourself. You're always like making something out of something that is not really what it is. And so you're just like up, it's basically up in the air. So essentially they say when you first start meditating, and especially if you don't read text and you don't have a teacher, it's like being blindfolded with your hands tied behind your back in the middle of a desert, and you have no idea which way to go. And you're just like, oh my God. But so thankfully I have a really great teacher who's given me great instructions, and I put them to practice, and it's gotten better and better. Like I'm better able to control my mind.
Yeah.
I'm calmer. I was able to give up weed.
Yeah.
Like that was
all for
crazy.
meditation, huh?
Yeah. It took me at least 4 years to like, no. Excuse me. It took me like 6 years to quit weed. I was like on and off, back and forth. And it just kind of got to the point where I was like, you can't just smoke weed all the time and get enlightened.
You could definitely get addicted to weed.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I've been addicted. I've been there, so I know. Yeah.
My name's Hard Drive.
Right.
And I'm addicted to boo this man.
Right.
So yeah, like, so I want to continue to educate myself, continue to speak about it with anybody that wants to listen. I would like to get like a master's degree in it,
in Buddhism.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I even have like the college that I want to go to lined up, and
wow.
And so
see, me and my wife, we took on meditation. I don't really practice any religion. I was raised Catholic.
Yeah.
Kind of straight away from that. But I felt the same way. Like the way you described it, I wouldn't have put it in that term, but definitely in the beginning, it was a lot of scatterbrainness. And I found that from continuing to practicing it, and new techniques of breathing and learning how to let thoughts come and then let them go and not try to control them or stop them.
Who taught you that one?
I've had a lot of people that I've had interactions with. So it's just, I kind of feel like, not to say I'm like some holy figure, the Buddha, but I picked up little pieces here and there from different people that I've talked to about meditating. Yeah. And one of the first experiences that I had with meditating, the guy actually went to a class, and there was a group of us, and he
Yeah.
showed us what he learned in this class.
Yeah.
And that was what it was. He says, don't try to control your thoughts.
Yep.
Don't try to stop them. They're going to come.
Yep.
He's like, just let them come, take it for what it is, and let it go. Keep focusing on your breathing. So
yeah,
that was good.
Wow.
I still use, that was probably a little under 10 years ago. And I still use that one today.
No,
Yeah.
you're further along the path than me.
Well, no, because there was like periods where I didn't do it, and then I came back to it. Like life would get hectic or things would happen, and I'm like, maybe I should start back with the basics. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I'd get too complacent and start going off on my own little shit again. And then, So, but that's right now we're in the middle of a 21-day straight meditation thing to see how that goes. So.
I'm 7 years in, and mindfulness of breathing is still the main practice that I do.
Nice.
It's absolutely the foundation, and that'll take you all the way to enlightenment. I've heard that many times said by the greatest teachers, that mindfulness of the breathing will take you all the way there if you diligently apply yourself to that type of thing. But
it takes discipline.
Yeah. Yeah. And so essentially, like, a lot of people will take on a spiritual, like just a mindfulness practice or a meditation practice, but they won't augment it with the ethics aspect of it. And so they kind of understand, like, oh, I want to be like calmer, better, more productive, nicer, maybe better at my job, that kind of thing. And so those are really great motivations to pick up a spiritual practice. But something that really lights a fire under your ass and like really like shifts the perspective of like why you're practicing in the first place is that you recognize like the rareness of this human life and like what a human being is. Because like, I love this statistic. There are 10,000 trillion ants walking around on Earth right now.
I can't even see that number in my head.
And only 7 billion of us. So think the bird, all the other types of animals, essentially, according to Buddhism and Buddha, is they were also human beings. They have they got minds just like us, and that's their situation right now.
So does Buddhism believe in reincarnation?
Not only do they believe in it, but essentially you cannot be a serious, like practical, like honest Buddhist unless you take that on as your main perspective.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
so that's what you're referring to when you're talking about the ants and the birds and stuff.
Like that. Exactly. Not only were they humans, but they could be humans again in the future. Maybe they'll like get stepped on by a human, and then when their little ghost, their little bug ghost leaves their body, they got stepped on by a person. They're like, whoa, that's a pretty dope incarnation. And then they go like try to become a human or something like that. And that's not, I'm not saying you should go step on bugs. That's on purpose, purpose. That's bad on you. So that's actually some pretty harsh karma right there. But so karma, that's like a whole nother topic. And so karma. So karma is what they call it is the karma of body, speech, and mind. And so all karma involves intrinsically intentionality of seeing something, either wanting it, being either attracted to it, neutral to it, or having aggression or like a negative reaction towards it. And then you make a decision what you're going to do with this thing based on that. And so that's what we almost all do with everything that we see, is that that's either I like this or I don't like this. Most people, they just separate the whole universe into two categories of I'm for this, I'm against this.
Yeah. And so simple.
And so that colors that type of like coloration of red light, green light of what we do with reality is what creates karma for ourselves. And so essentially to the Buddhists, they would say that is what keeps you revolving around, like it's called samsara. It's called the wheel of rebirth. It's called the wheel. It's actually called the wheel of sharp knives that fucking spins around and fucking cuts you up a million times as you're.
So kind of like if you're a shitty ant, you're gonna come back and have a shitty life as whatever else you come back as.
Oh yeah.
Type shit. Yeah. So karma, basically karma is what you give is what you get.
Yeah. And it's it's more, what it is more than anything is it's conceptual. And so we have these things called concepts, where we see a thing, we generally, like, sometimes you can invent a new concept, like very rarely does that happen, but like, let's say like in science is a thing called the Higgs boson, where they take a bunch of quarks and then they smash them together, and then the quarks like break apart into like some pieces, and then one of those pieces goes flying off, and then these scientists go, wow, look at that thing, it's called a boson. And then it's not a boson, it's just a thing that you made, like you called it that.
Right.
And so it's like, this is the example that I kind of came up with in my own mind, is that there's kids at recess, and then they all go line up, and then the two leaders, they start picking teams, and then Michael's on my team, Jamie's on my team, blah, blah, blah. And then after person after person, now all of a sudden you have two teams.
Right.
Where before there was no teams.
Right.
And now, because you decided that that's what it is now a team. And so that's what we do with everything.
Right.
And all things that are a thing in Buddhism, it's called a dharma or a phenomena. Essentially, the mind creates it. The mind names it. It's called name and form. It has a form. We give it a name. And so what we do with these names is we say, oh, I'm Caucasian. I'm a Muslim. I'm a Buddhist. Like, I'm a good person. You're a fucking asshole. So that's just like what human beings do. And so
are you suggesting though also that we create our own reality?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. All of our realities are completely created by us and us alone.
Right.
Nobody, I mean, people can give you ideas. Like, obviously we're just sharing ideas right now. So now basically all the ideas that you'll have about Buddhism, they're all going to come from me, but you can choose to listen, but you can listen to me or not.
Right. Right.
You can go listen to somebody else, and then they'll tell you something else, and you'll be like, oh, Will's full of shit. So you can, and so you can listen to that guy. And then, and we have this thing called free will. We have agency, and Christianity and all philosophy deals with agency all the time. Is like, what is it that is allowing us to choose to snap my fingers now or there?
Right. Well, there's a science behind that, but it sounds like Buddhism broke it down in a spiritual term rather than 2 + 2 = 4. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You go to scientists and they're like, oh yeah, your brain neurons, and it sends a signal up. You know what I mean? So yeah. Neurologists, they love to pretend like they know all of that, but they don't. They don't. How many Buddhist neurologists do you know? I know one Buddhist. It's actually really sad. I get really sad every time I see a really smart kid, and he's like, I want to be a physicist. I'm like, no, be a meditator. But anyway, so there's this one of my favorite teachers. His name is Lama Alan Wallace. He, in the 1970s, he studied under the Dalai Lama for 14 years as a Buddhist monk and went through the whole training in that way. And then he came to the United States and he got his degree at Amherst College, his master's in physics at Amherst College. And then he went to Stanford and got his PhD in world religions. And now he's like 71 years old, but he's essentially this world-renowned Buddhist scholar, but and meditation teacher, but he's also just like nailed it on all aspects of science and how it relates to Buddhism. And so that's my God, like that's my Buddha to me, is Lama Alan Wallace, because what's a lama? Lama, it just means unsurpassed. La means like unsurpassed, like you can't get beyond it, like none higher. And then ma in Tibetan, it means mother. So they're like a mother that takes care of you, but they're also like the highest mother. And so that's your teacher. That's your Buddhist teacher. And so anybody that's a Buddhist, you said that you said he learned from Buddha? No, from the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama. Okay. I mean, yeah, Dalai Lama is Buddha. Yes, he's definitely a Buddha. Okay. I think, in my opinion, right, from what I've seen and heard, right, he has all the qualities that a Buddha would have. Okay. So that's what's weird with Christianity. It's kind of like, what would Jesus do? Right. Or like if Jesus was here, like type of thing. And then in Buddhism, you can just point directly at the Dalai Lama and be like, right there. That's what it's like. Go right there. So, well, it would make sense because the reincarnation aspect. So Buddha continues to come back. But how do they decide who's so the Dalai Lama is like the top guy right now. Like there's nobody above him that's present in the world of Buddhism right now.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. So how do they come to that conclusion? How do we get there?
Well, he's on his number 14 right now. That's such a long story.
Who?
Dalai Lama. He's called the Great 14th because he's the 14th Dalai Lama.
In the simplest way you could put it right now, like, is there a group of people? It's
all of Tibet. All of the great spiritual masters for like 1,300 years in Buddhist history in Tibet. All of the great masters have all come to agree that yes, Dalai Lama is the king of the world.
Okay.
And so
enough.
get this. He's the king of Tibet. Mm-hmm. Like in the 13th, the 15th century, the Dalai Lama, it was the 5th Dalai Lama was basically handed over the government of all of Tibet. And so he became the king of Tibet. He was also a monk, but he was so enlightened and so baller and such like a great scholar and master that all of Tibet was like, dude, can you please just like take the reins and take care of us? And he's
help
like, yeah.
us.
He was like, fine. And so Tibet's this like kind of isolated culture. It's not all the way isolated. They had like interactions with like China and all kinds of countries and Nepal and Bhutan. But essentially for 9 more incarnations of the Dalai Lama, he's still been the king until recently when they got invaded by China. And then he's the first ever Dalai Lama to actually give up his kingship and then create a democracy of Tibet. And so now Tibet has a parliament.
Okay.
Because he's a super cool guy. He's obviously has non-attachment to his own royal, just like the Buddha gave up his throne.
Right.
He's literally like a Buddha. If you like, I have a whole podcast about the Dalai Lama where I break it down as to what this person is like. He even actually has these things called the Mind and Life conferences where he brings the world's top scientists, whether it's cosmology, education, physics, like neuroscience, physics, brings them all to talk about these super ridiculously complicated concepts, and then they just like all perfectly align with what Buddha already said.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah. It's gnarly. There's actually a documentary on Amazon Prime right now called Dalai Lama Scientist, where it covers these Mind and Life conferences. And
so what I'm getting is that like this sounds like it's enlightenment. It's your religious practice.
Yeah.
But it's also acceptance of everything that's around as well, is what it sounds like.
Like radical acceptance.
He's like, let's bring all the experts from every topic, every aspect, and I'm going to show you how we're okay with this. It fits into Buddhism. And
he goes,
to me, that's what my goal is for meditation is like to be more calm with my mind because my mind's constantly scatterbrained.
Yeah.
B, live in the right now because I have kids now and they grow up so quick that it's just like, where does the time go? You know what I mean? Where does the time go? So to be in the right now is like, so it's precious to me, but at the same time in my head, I'm like, it's difficult to obtain.
Yeah.
So, and then acceptance of everything because I'm not in control of the universe. Things happen that are outside of my control and outside of my help. Yeah. And it's very easy to take those things personal and aggravate myself. And then I throw myself off. I'm a certain way to my wife and my kids, which isn't fair to them or to my coworkers or to anybody I run into. So that's kind of my whole thing. And to hear that Buddhism is kind of like that too is pretty interesting to me.
That's the open mind right there. You just nailed it. Because that's the gateway to all self-discovery, improvement, like self-medicine, self-help, self-knowledge, self-realization is just admitting your shortcomings and then actually seeing something that's better than that.
See, and that's what I'm not the way I found this was from an anonymous program. So you could probably put 2 and 2 together. Yeah. So I won't advertise it here, but that's where my spiritual journey really began.
Wow. And I heard so much good stuff about that program, bro.
It's been on and off as far as not my sobriety in the program, but my spirituality, like my quest for spirituality, because just like you've practiced it for 7 years, but to obtain what you want to obtain, that means that you have to commit every day. all
Every
day
day.
to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's not what I've done, but I'm not to say like, oh, I'm ashamed of it or anything like that. Like my journey's been my journey, and I'm blessed to grow and know the things that I do and be able to learn the things that I learn. And I'm a sponge. I'm just soaking it up. That's kind of why I started the show, for some
Be a
stuff like this.
sponge, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So
fuck, that's the
I
best
mean,
way to be.
but Buddha, the correlation that you've given me tonight so far with Buddhism and the program that I practice to get sober is like so hand in hand. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. And you know what they pound into us is this isn't a religion. It's just a way to live your life on life's terms. A better way to live life.
What other way you're gonna live? You're gonna make life.
Because I used to constantly fight with life. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, we putting them up, bro. You know what I mean?
That's the universal dumb guy perspectives.
Right.
Of, no, the universe can get fucked.
And that's where
you guys can do what I want to do.
That's where that conceptual programming I'm talking about comes into, because they don't teach you this shit.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to school and learning about meditating and not fighting life and stuff that you could actually use in your everyday life. You know what I mean? So, so I feel like there's a certain aspect of where we need to deprogram from what's the normal societal programming and start getting that. And I feel like the more people I talk to, I mean, how long have me and you, I don't even think I mentioned this at the beginning of the show, but you shot my very first solo music video ever.
The graveyard one?
Yep. That was my very first music video ever.
What was the name?
I can't even remember.
I was watching it the other night though. It was dope. I loved it.
I can't even remember it right now either, but that was my very first solo music video ever. And then you shot one more with me and Nate. Yeah. And then shout out to Nate D's. What's up? And then I haven't really had contact with you since then. Yeah. That was like 2012. Yeah. Yeah. Well, right after that, I was like really into the music. I was really into it. I was like getting better at rapping, getting better at the videos. I had did a project with Jacka right before he died. Yeah, I remember you were shooting for PSD and stuff too. Right? Yeah, then he kind of had his little his issue, and then I just fucking got caught up in the weed game. Yeah, it was the Wild West of growing weed, and But look how everything's came full circle. Yeah. You started a podcast, which, by the way, we'll mention at the end of the show. Okay, yeah. It happens to do with Buddhism, right? Yeah, yeah. And then this show has been a long time coming. Okay, it's been a long time coming. For me, it's been one of the things that I wanted to do, and the stars just lined up right with it as far as doing it. But it's just crazy to see how full circle everything comes. And really then does, man. What you're talking about with Buddhism and everything, it's just like, wow, bro. Yeah. Like, wow. So at the Buddhist time, there was no Buddhism. Mm-hmm. The Buddhists didn't call themselves the Buddhists. I guess they might have called him the Buddha, but he had a lot of different names. What was it? Just being or? I don't know. I don't know what you call it. That's even where like the Zen tradition comes in, because even to call it like Buddhism is like missing the mark. So even Buddhism, they say like, even if you look for the Buddha, you won't find him. That type of thing. If you look for your mind, you won't find it. Right. So if you like they said, there's a thing called a bodhisattva, which is like somebody who decides to bring all beings to enlightenment even before themselves. So, which means for the rest of eternity, I'm going to be doing basically what we're doing right now, is just like talking about reality. Mm-hmm. And then they say, if you call yourself a bodhisattva, you're not a bodhisattva, because you're totally missing the point. You're self-arrogant. So here we go. So I wanted to talk about like this idea of emptiness. Okay. And so emptiness in our society and in our language, it has a negative connotation. So when you're depressed, you just like, I feel really empty inside, or just like you're listening to Kesha and you're like, oh, this is so empty. This is so empty, man. Right. And then, but it touches my soul. Yeah. So in Buddhism, they call actually emptiness, they call it relationship. Okay. So to what? Exactly. So the relationship between subject and object, the emptiness can be talked about, but it can be illustrated
like this. What do you call this?
A fist.
A fist. Where did it go?
Into a hand.
Into a hand. Does
Right.
that mean it was ever actually a fist to begin with?
Okay. Okay. I see where you're going.
And so what do we call this?
A hand.
Okay. So what if I cut off this finger? Would it still be a hand?
A hand with four, well,
With-
three
with
fingers
four
and a thumb.
fingers, yeah. What if I cut all of them off? What would you call that?
A stub.
You call it a stub. You'd call it a stubby palm.
Mhm.
And so this thing we call a hand, like the veins that come up from the arm, they don't actually like have a cutoff right where they're here. And then like, oh, these are now hand veins.
Right. Right.
They just run right in.
They're
The
just
skin-
veins.
That it has like a little wrinkle right here, but it doesn't actually, the skin doesn't actually stop anywhere.
Mhm.
Like there's no point at which the forearm becomes the hand.
Right.
So we call this a hand. It's called conceptual designation.
Okay.
And so that's really interesting to do that to everything. Like, oh wow, so everything basically can be broken down into parts. Like there's the philosophical idea of like, oh, like if you take a house and then you take one beam apart, like eventually, like at what point does it stop becoming a house?
Right.
That type of thing. Like that's fun. That's a nice like philosophical exercise. Like that's fun to do. But what that means psychologically, what that means for our own mind state is when we take our attention and then turn it around at ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, what actually am I?
Mm.
When I say myself, it's you say like this selfishness that we have, like this self-aggrandizement, this malignant narcissism, this megalomania, like what actually is the cause of that? Why do we have this sense of being when the thing that we call this thing, the self, can't actually be found?
Mm.
And so Buddhism has an idea of selflessness where, you know, mostly in our language, in our culture, we think of like selflessness, like, oh, such a selfless person. Like, oh, he just like gave that bum $100. Like,
Right.
what a
Right.
selfless guy.
Outright. He's a righteous guy. Yeah.
Righteous guy. But really, selflessness is the way things actually are. You actually don't have a self, which is a mind fuck.
Mm.
Because you're like, well, then what am I then?
Yeah.
And so Buddhism has an idea of called the 5 aggregates. So you're a form, you're a body, your feelings, which are sensation,
Okay.
your mental processes, mental intentionality, like your thought processes, like your which create karma. It's called mental formations.
Mhm.
Form, feeling, perceptions, which are like our concepts, like our perceptions of what we see, the computer, Robbie Diesel, LA, microphone. And then we have consciousness, which is essentially like our sense of being in the world. Like
Your
our
understanding of what is out here.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
so you have your tactile, you have your visual, you have your auditory, your gustatory, and your whatever the nose one is, and your sense of smell. And so those are 5 consciousnesses. And that's what the being is. If you look at the being, you don't really find anything else besides those 5 things. And yet the self cannot be found in any of those things.
This is all teaching in Buddhism.
This is the core teaching.
This
of
sounds
Buddhism.
like the ultimate like woke bro religion.
Yeah.
It does. So if you're out there
It
listening
does.
and
It
you're
does.
woke, bro, you might
Yeah.
want to get into Buddhism, but
Yeah.
don't half step and give Buddhism a bad name.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's
If you
what Buddhism,
want to do it, go for it like Will. If not, you know what I mean? Just play the background.
I mean, yeah, just do whatever you want. I guess do it. That's what my teachers tell me. I'm like, what should I do? Like, do whatever you want. But like, I obviously look at the great beings, like all the great masters and what they say and what they do. And I'm like, oh, that's what I want. Because I'm
Okay,
I'm crazy. Like
so
most people.
what you're talking about and then is
This-
Buddhism. Okay, so tell me if I'm weird, but I used to work at this metal factory. Okay. And
Yeah.
there was 2 bathrooms on the floor that I was on in the department that I was at. There was one in the very back of the factory, and then
Yeah.
there was one at the very front of the factory. So
Yeah.
I would always go to the front one because it's closer to the office where they had waters, refreshments, and stuff like that throughout the day because we were working 12-hour shifts. So it was long days.
Yeah.
So I would always go to that one. But there was also crews that I worked 7 on, 7 off. But there were also crews that worked Monday through Friday. So on the Monday through Friday days that I worked, that bathroom was more heavily visited than on the weekends.
Yeah.
So me being the weird self that I am, call it weird, whatever, I would literally walk up there so many times because I worked there for so many years. But I would start thinking before I went to go reach for that door handle, because there was just one bathroom for male and female, just one, you know, so it was locked, it's locked. So I'm going to reach for this door, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I started getting to a point because I'm bored walking. If I say in my head that this door is going to be unlocked, nobody's going to be in here, nobody's going to be in there, and that door is going to be unlocked. If I reach my hand out and say, I know it's going to be locked, somebody's going to be in here, it would be fucking locked. And so I'm like, where's the science behind this? There's got to be a science behind this. Somebody somewhere has enough time on their hands to sit here, or am I just crazy? So now what you just explained to me, it's not touching on the science of if Rob knows there's somebody in here, because it's 50 fucking 50, but the science of the reality and what is and what isn't, and what makes what is and what isn't. Like you said with your fist, like, okay, it's a fist and now it's not. What, did the fist ever exist? Because now it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like the old saying, if a tree falls in the fucking forest, did the tree really fall? Or if a bear shit in the woods, did he really shit?
Yeah. Well, yes, the bear shit in the woods. But if a tree fell in this forest, no, it would not make a sound, because the sound doesn't happen until it hits the fucking ear.
Right. That's what I'm saying. But go ahead. Go ahead.
What I want to say is that if it is 50-50, then that's a probability.
Mhm.
And so if you were merely guessing, then the guesses would mirror what the actual happenstance chance would be of you getting it right. But it sounds like you were nailing it a little bit more.
Well,
let
me reiterate, it wasn't 100%. I don't think, I don't think that I have like maybe I do have some crazy intuitiveness or whatever, but like, okay, some days I'd be like, it's going to be opposite. I'm going to say it's locked and it's going to be unlocked, and it would work.
But it's still but you were still right.
Right. But what I'm saying is that I was like, where does that come from? Am I creating my perception of reality? Am I able to do that with my mind? Because if I can do it, anybody could do it.
Yeah. So that's okay. So you're touching on a misconception maybe of what emptiness could be, so that not everything is just the way it is because you said it is. 2 and 2 always equals 4.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reality in which 2 and 2 equals 4. But the mind fuck is that 2 does not actually exist. The number 2 is not a thing in reality. 2 is a concept. But since we all beings agree on what 2 is, 2 and 2 will always equal 4.
Because that's a higher consciousness.
Yeah. So it's not like you predicting that the person being in the bathroom put them in the bathroom. They were already there before you walked up.
Right. And that's what I'm trying to get at. Right.
Yeah. So, but my pet theory, my guess, my assessment of that is, you had a taste of the omniscient mind of the Buddha. So you in your head, you in your mind, in your being, in your consciousness, have a Buddha that is waiting to be discovered. You are the Buddha. You're already a Buddha.
Right.
You're it. Because you're alive, you're a being, you're conscious, you're already the thing. You are what the thing is. It honestly doesn't get better than what you already are. And that being knows everything. That being literally is the person in the bathroom. It's the door. It's the space between the bathroom.
Wow.
And there's information that's constantly being passed around between these things, whether it's like vibrations or it's actual literal, like I'm reading the mind of the person that might be in the bathroom or whatever it is. There's many different things that the mind could be tuned into. But so so when I got into Buddhism, I saw what Buddha said and what the text said and what it was like, and I definitely had doubts. So I was like a normal person, just had a job, a house, I had like, some basic suffering, like I had some neuroses, like some things were going wrong. Like I was kind of a dick, but I was generally fine. And then I got interested in this thing called Buddhism because it just sounded like fast. Really, honestly, at that time, I was taking a lot of mushrooms, and I figured, I was like, I think I can figure out like this universe thing. I was like, I think I'm gonna like figure it out like a pothead would think. And so I started looking into it, and then there was like, oh, Buddha, he would like walk through walls, and he could fly, and he could, like shoot flames out of his feet and then water out of the top of his head. And I was like, all right, I guess, like, that's cool. I didn't know that's what it was. So because
So that's where you were kind of like, this is bogus.
because I was like turned off by other religions. Like Jesus was born of a virgin. And I was like, oh, all right.
Right.
And so I started doing like, well, it's like, well, they do say a lot of things that make a lot of sense, like the philosophical aspects of it, like the meditation, like the having a calm mind, like the greed, anger, and ignorance, like a lot of things that directly apply to my life. But then there was this supernatural aspect to it where I was like, that's pretty nuts. Like I have no idea what to make of this. And so I started doing research, and there's an aspect of academia and of physics and of science, and it's called paranormal psychology.
Oh, paranormal.
Have you heard, or it's parapsychology? Have you heard of this? Have you heard of this? Well, let me enlighten you. So there are these dorky scientists that are super, super rigorous. They're real physicists with real PhDs that do all kinds of other work. And at the same time, they spend their free time and free money researching a psychic phenomenon. And so for a long time, there was a physicist named Russell Targ, who was one of the inventors of the laser. Literally invented the laser.
Yeah.
And so he worked at Stanford Research Institute, that would used to be related to the university, but then they kind of broke off and started doing their own thing, like military contracts. And so he built a laser for the US Army and the CIA, Department of Justice, whatever it was. And then he was already spiritually inclined. He was like a member of the Spiritualist Society. It used to be like a big thing in like the 50s and 60s.
You said the spiritless?
The spiritualist.
Oh, the spiritualist. Okay.
So like seances and like witchcraft, like just spooky, like paranormal things. Like it was like like spiritualism of like the 20s and 30s, when they're like Americans were just starting to like get into that type of thing. And so he was into that. And so he was like he had his own like spiritual experiences. So he started researching psychic phenomenon. And so what he discovered was a thing called remote viewing. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I have. Absolutely.
Remote viewing. It's where you essentially put your mind into a meditative state. You calm your mind, you clear it of all thoughts and all concepts. And then somebody will ask you a question of saying, can you tell me what's going on in this place? And they'll even do it super specifically. They'll just give you straight up coordinates, and they'll say, these are the coordinates, 49 degrees south by south, whatever.
Let me just say MK Ultra.
It was part of the MK Ultra program. That's what this was. So this is like the aftermath of the MK Ultra, where they figured out
the MK Ultra was kind of like testing the waters.
They tried to manipulate the human psyche to create like super soldiers, or like the person that killed John Lennon.
Super spies, pretty much.
Super spies.
They wanted to spy on people without being there.
Exactly. And so the guy that murdered John Lennon, he was MK Ultra.
Right.
100%. Like I've read a book on it.
Well, to everybody else, that's theory, but I choose to believe that myself.
I read a book on it when I was 14, and I was like, oh my God, this is the.
What is it? The Catcher in the Rye?
Catcher in the Rye guy. I forget what his name is.
I do too.
He was
he said that book made him do it.
He was an ex-military. Well, no, just this guy researched this guy's background. So he was an ex-military, and then all of a sudden he started like traveling all over the US. He was like a totally poor. He like went through the Vietnam War, but I don't think he served. He was like a sniper in like the Marines. And then he was like this poor dude who had nothing going on. And then all of a sudden he just started like traveling all around the US and like was seen in all these places, and then at places where there are major military bases. And then all of a sudden he pops up and murders John Lennon out of nowhere with no apparent reason whatsoever. And then he sits there and then waits for the police to show up, and then sat in a jail cell the rest of his life and never said anything about why he did it. And obviously John Lennon was spearheading the anti-war movement. It was in 1980. He was just starting to get back into the music, and he was about to start a new cultural revolution.
Definitely a threat to what they had going on.
Yeah. So they murdered him. Yeah, it's plain as day. Fred Hampton, Martin Luther King, they tried to kill Bob Marley, like, so on and so forth. Anyway, so this guy, Russell Targ, he starts to, so remote viewing, you give you coordinates, this person quiets their mind, and they go, bzzz, and then they get images in their head, and then they draw it out, and then literally just nail exactly what's in that location.
Yep.
And so this research was so exact, like in like the 90th percentiles of accuracy of what these people were describing, that the CIA funded this psychic research for 20 years. And they did all types of like spy operations and all these things. And so essentially, like, the science is in on psychic ability of remote viewing, maybe telekinesis, that's kind of like out there, of like moving things with your mind,
right?
But reading other people's minds, like seeing like what's going on in another room or on the other side of the planet. So there was this psychic in the program named Ingo Swann, and he said, I can see not only anywhere on Earth, I can look into the solar system and tell you what's going on out there.
The cosmos. Yep.
And so he remote viewed one of the moons of Saturn, and Saturn has all these rings around it. And so he was looking at this moon on Saturn, and he was describing rings around Saturn. And the physicist at it was actually Carl Sagan at the time, who was like Mr. Nerd astronomer himself.
Right.
He was like, oh, well, I'm sorry, but there's no rings around Saturn or whatever. Like 15 years later, they send out Hubble to go look at the fucking moons. Guess what? There's rings around
Saturn.
No, not around the moon of Saturn, of one of the moons. So he was remote viewing something that they hadn't seen yet.
Oh, wow.
In their space program. And so for all these scientists that love to ignore like psychic phenomenon, they totally ignore all research of the mind, of contemplation, meditation, like they love to study the brains of meditators.
So wait, you said they denounce it?
They just ignore it completely. So all of this science is in, like, there's a researcher named oh god, I forget his name, whatever, but not important. So he spent his entire life researching other psychic phenomena, like in this research, because it's all repeatable things that you can research in your own home,
right?
And you can get results in it, and the results are so high, they're so accurate that it almost is like more accurate than any other form of science that we have.
Yeah.
But it just totally demolishes all notions of materialism.
Well, to me, I think that's a good thing, because I feel like the aspect of meditation and the spirituality that's happening is the key that they're missing to having ultimate power over that.
But it's also the key that's going to end their funding.
Yep.
So it's not their branch.
Right.
It's not their expertise. They haven't spent their entire life researching just physical phenomenon, basically, to just
I feel like
nowhere.
In the state that we're in right now, it's a legit attack on people's minds. The next war is going to be on people's minds. It's already happening. It's not the next war. It's already going on. They're coming for our consciousness, our spirituality, and our higher elevation. It's exactly what it is.
I call it the military, academic, advertising, and whatever industrial complex.
Military industrial complex.
The military industrial, but it's also the academics, because the academic research is what funds all of these not only corporate interests, but militaristic interests.
Right.
And the political complex, and then it's advertising. It just warps our perceptions. It makes us care about things that not only don't matter, but things that don't even exist according to Buddhism.
Right. So essentially, Buddhism could probably free us from this?
It's the total antithesis of all of this. Essentially, it's the science of how to free yourself from grasping onto things that don't matter, that literally will destroy you. That we have obesity is just like totally overrun this nation. Like,
100%.
like we're the most violent nation in the entire country. We're essentially we're the dumbest. Like, we got some smart people, but we're fucking dumb as rocks.
Right.
Like, we can't,
or we're gullible.
we're just
So we
gullible.
look stupid. Yeah.
Just gullible, bro. Like, I don't know, like just the whole political arena on both sides. Like,
So where does spirituality versus religion fit into Buddhism for you? Do they go hand in hand?
Versus religion? Yeah.
As
Because
far as that
not everyone wants to be a Buddhist. Like, that's
right, but you consider, well, you are a Buddhist, but you consider that your religion. But within your religion, you practice spirituality. So somebody like me, I don't necessarily claim a religion, but I'm totally attached to spirituality. I want spiritual growth.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't want to take one thing. To me, it's kind of like Buddhism. Is the universe and the energy is what you would probably call my God. And I think that the energy that is the universe is everything, because everything has energy.
Everything. Yeah.
So
you already knew all that.
That's my spiritual conquest, is to just get more in tune with that.
Yeah.
But for anybody else out there who may not want to be a Buddhist, but is on that same spiritual conquest, is that's not bad or taboo, right? In the spiritual world.
No. So Dalai Lama, he goes around, and everywhere he goes, he speaks for tens of thousands of people. And he never ever gives, like, when he goes and gives public talks, he doesn't talk about these like advanced Buddhist concepts. What he talks about is tolerance, patience, kindness, compassion, gentleness, and mental stability and education. Like, none of those are Buddhist like, obviously they are Buddhist they're very central to Buddhism, but they're not Buddhist concepts. They're just human being concepts. And so whatever it is that you're going on in your life, essentially your life is meaningless without those things.
Right.
So what Buddhism is, it's a series of techniques that can enhance those qualities in our human nature of the compassion, tolerance, education, blah, blah, blah.
So do you have any starting points as far as anybody, if they've never got into meditation or they want to try it? Is there any good pointers or anything like for somebody to start out without getting too like personal or anything like that?
I think the number one starting point, if you are interested in Buddhism and like what it has to offer you, like, because you might have your own spiritual tradition, you might be a Taoist, you might be a Christian, but if you want to like do some research onto something and like read something to like soak up some knowledge, I would read this thing called the Dhammapada. And the Dhammapada is essentially like a book. It's like a very thin book of Buddha's sayings, and they're each like sometimes like a sentence and maybe like a paragraph, and it's essentially the central tenets of Buddhism. And it's not any like structural, organized way of like, this is how you meditate, this is what you do, but it's just straight wisdom. It's just dropping dimes. It's like it's like KRS-One or something, just like of like India, and like it's just straight human genius.
So where do the sounds, do you guys have like sounds in your meditation like they do in some Zen, like the ohms and the
om? So om is a mantra in and of itself. So Buddhism it's derived from the Sanskrit language, and Sanskrit is so old nobody knows where it comes from. It's just too old. It's it's prehistoric. Like, and really, honestly, like Socrates said, like, or Plato or something, he was like, writing stuff down, how's anybody going to remember anything? And so like, so in the ancient world, when we didn't have TV and like radio and movies, all you had to do was just like talk to your friends, learn shit. You would go speak to your local wise man and he would drop you some game. And that's what life was.
And you would pass it on.
And you would pass it on.
But then it would get watered down because, you know what I mean? You'd pass it on to person and pass it on, and then you put their own little twist and shit on it.
And so the Sanskrit language, it's this ancient, it's just this incredible language that basically it's like been engineered to perfectly suit the concepts of enlightenment, because that's where the enlightenment comes from. It comes from the Indic, I mean, Taoism had their enlightenment, that type of thing, but the Indians, nothing is older than the Indian religions. It's just they nailed it. And so the Sanskrit language in and of itself is like a giant mantra. Like the whole language is a mantra. But
Okay.
this om, this om syllable, it represents the totality. Like everything is om.
Okay.
So like there's like I've seen this T-shirt that says in the beginning was the word and the word was om. You know what,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it has this kind of like everything is om, like it's the beginning, like the alpha type of the alpha and omega. It's like the alpha is om.
Right.
And so there's that. There's a mantra called ah. It's just the ah syllable, ah. And so what this is, it's a negation in Sanskrit. So kind of like ahistorical or like asymmetry, like it's just like non, like not. So it would be like avidya, anatman. So that type of thing. So just means not. And so that represents emptiness. And so that means that represents the empty common denominator of all things. And so in Buddhism, so other religions don't really have, like no other religion has emptiness, like not Hinduism, not anything.
Yeah.
Like Taoism,
I've never heard it.
Taoism gets kind of close to it. And so there's this conceptual emptiness of everything. And so everything, that's the nature of everything. You and me, our nature is emptiness.
Right.
And which also means that our nature is relationship, because what we're empty of is empty of an essential nature. Like the one real thing that makes Robbie Diesel, like that thing does not exist. Like that's just an idea that doesn't exist. Kind of like the idea of zero, like the number zero, it's there. It's like, this is zero, but zero is not a real thing in existence. So, and so empty, everything is empty. All things are empty.
Zero is nothing.
Zero is nothing, and nothing doesn't exist.
And nothing is nothing. Yeah.
Nothing is nothing.
Yeah.
So, which is
essentially you're saying I created the Robbie Diesel.
You create, absolutely you did.
which we all know, right?
But who else did? Well, actually, I mean, lots of every God created Robbie Diesel, really.
Right.
So,
but
like
I
your
get
family,
I get what you're saying, where you're coming from.
Your friends, your town, your country, your language created Robbie Diesel. Like, and so that's what I mean, is that the Robbie Diesel is not just Robbie Diesel. Robbie Diesel is everything.
But he is nothing.
And at the same time, it's nothing. It's one small aspect of the totality. So Robbie Diesel is definitely real. Like you're sitting there talking to me, obviously.
Right.
But your essential nature is this emptiness. It really what is, it's openness. And so you could say open minds, but it's really an empty mind, because there's nothing there that's blocking it from putting something into it.
Yeah, that's the whole point of this show. Fill it up.
Yeah.
Get it all in there. empty out what you thought you know at the door when you tune in.
Yeah.
Empty out what you thought you know.
Come to open minds with an open teacup.
I'm only getting people on here that's 7 years deep in their topic or more. You know what I mean? For real. Because I mean, the basis of starting this was I didn't want to be the fucking dickhead talking about myself and what I know in this the whole fucking time for 2 hours. I didn't want to be that show. Yeah. I wanted to have topics, some of which are taboo or that people are like, whoa, we don't go there type shit.
Yeah.
And have experts on there who may or may not get the opportunity to have the platforms or voice that they feel like they should have. Yeah. And then the viewer can take that information and do what they want with it. I'm not here to debate you. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. You practiced this for 7 years, so I can't tell you you're wrong. You know what I mean? Because I learned a bunch tonight, and I appreciate that to the core. So the whole basis on this is to let the viewer do what they want with that. Just pack it in, man. Take what you want, leave what you don't. But hey, you're hearing from the next 7 years. I mean, they say 10,000 hours is a master. I don't know if you have 10,000 hours, but 7 years is a long time, dude.
Yeah. Like Master Hua said, if it helps you, pick it up. If it doesn't, drop it.
Exactly.
Essentially, yeah. So about these sounds that Buddhism has. So Sanskrit has this idea of mantra, which is just like things you can repeat, like om, like like shunyata jana vajra svabhava amakoham. So they have these like words that the vibrations of them, the meaning of them is leads you towards enlightenment. So a mantra is like something that you repeat that brings you towards higher knowledge of reality. But
During
really,
a meditation.
during meditation,
Okay.
which really for the serious practitioner should just be all the time. Like they say in my type of Buddhism, you should never be apart from the mantra. Like when you find yourself not repeating the mantra.
So do you feel like when you
fucked
say
up.
that stuff that it takes you somewhere or does something more for
Oh
you?
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because I've read like lots and lots of books about, because the point of the mantra is the meaning,
Mhm.
you know, like what it is, like what it's actually talking about. And so I can just say like my main mantra is Om Ahum Vajra Guru Pama Siddhi Hom.
Wow.
And that just is like there's no way that I could sit here and explain to you the import of what that is.
Right.
But great masters have broken down every syllable of what that thing is, like 10 times over, like Hum Vajra Guru Pama Siddhi Hom. And like each one of those little things, it has like fucking pages coming out of it.
Jesus.
And so it's just like and so just to say it is to like reiterate these concepts to yourself.
So let me ask you this before you go on to your point. Do you have conversations like this with your Lama?
No, I can't, because he doesn't speak English.
Oh, right. But
I can't. I wish
right.
No,
okay.
I do. I know. I have two main lamas that I go see. One speaks great English, and then the other one,
does stuff
not
like
so
this
much.
come up in topic though?
Well, that's all they do. Every
Wow.
time I see them, they're just railing on these concepts. Because
Wow.
Buddhism, it's like 1,000,000 pages, like 100 million pages of like details of like what it is. And so there's no way you could read it all in a lifetime. And so you need a teacher to like break it down, the essential things you need to know. And of course you can learn as much as you want to, but the teacher will tell you the main thing that you need to be doing, which is always compassion. That's the main thing.
Have you ever
First.
heard of the Akashic records?
Akasha, yeah. Akasha just means space. And so
Right.
what is space? What's space?
Space is nothing.
Oh,
It's infinite. It's
nothing
infinite.
is not. No, only nothing is nothing. If it was space was nothing, we would call it
space
nothing.
is just the in between. It's
the in between.
Right.
So what is in between you and me right now?
space.
It's space, but it's also called a relationship. So the point where you are, the point where I'm at, you're in North Dakota right now, but obviously thanks to this great technology, we're brought like a little bit closer.
Right.
So the space between us is actually like all of reality. And so, I mean, everything is everything, obviously. That's like the big duh. But the space is like, there's even this thing called 0 point energy of the vacuum, and where you can do the mathematics and you find that even if you like where you look at the phenomenon of reality and the way that it moves and the way that it functions, and doing mathematics on that, if you take out all of like the particles in space and like all the things that we can see that are there, there's still energy. So even after you've like mathematically removed all the things, and so it's called dark energy or dark, so there's dark matter, which is the matter that's there that we can't see, and then dark energy, which is the energy that's there that we can't see or we don't know where it comes from. And so there's this thing, so even empty space has this massive energy that's inside of it. So even you take like a little atom of charged what's it called, the atom bomb, what's it called, not radium, plutonium, little tiny bit of plutonium that's iodized, it's charged, and all it is just some quarks and electron space around it, and then you fucking pop it open, it goes
right,
it fucking explodes a fucking city.
Yeah.
So that's what space is. Space is infinite energy. And so in Buddhism, they talk about how what we are just transformations of space. So there's the 4 elements of earth, water, fire, water. And really what those are just transformations of space. Wow. And so that's like the phenomenological way of like breaking down space. But space also relates to the mind. And we have what's called the space of the mind, which is where the mind is. So like you think of like an orange elephant, and then I'm picturing an orange element in right now, and then it wasn't there a minute ago, and then it was there, and then it goes away. That's called the space of the mind.
Right.
And so the space of the mind is actually pure potential for things to arise. And so it's empty, but it's also just chock full of potential energy, ready to take form into anything.
Ready for that plutonium to blow up.
Red. Yeah, and where did that nuclear bomb come from? It came from the human mind.
Mhm.
It did not exist anywhere until some stupid human being.
That's why I brought up the Akashic records, is because if you've never heard of it or have heard of it, it correlates to meditation. There's been a lot of great inventors in our time that not specifically related it to the Akashic records for a title, but meditation went to a place and came back with an idea from meditation.
Yeah, exactly. It came from the mind. All things come from the mind. So the Buddha said that the mind precedes all things. All things consist of mind, and all things arise from the mind. And so, Nikola Tesla, he came up with his idea for the
light bulb.
What was it called?
Light bulb. You talking about the light bulb?
No, it wasn't. I guess that was Edison, but he stole that from somebody else.
No, that was Tesla and Edison.
It was Tesla. Yeah, they were working together. Yeah.
That's what they weren't working together. That's what I'm getting at. The Akashic records. Yeah. That's what they talk about, is that these guys they weren't in any inner circles, but they came up with the same idea around the same time. Yes. Edison was just able to capitalize it corporately better than Tesla. So he got the credit for it.
Exactly. And so what all their inventions came from is it came from the human mind. And so according to Buddhism, it comes from the same place, which is the omniscient mind of the Buddha. Like, because they both had a Buddha mind, and they're both like in their essential nature were the same thing, but that's the thing though. So at the same time, they had this conception of themselves that maybe Nikola Tesla was a little more enlightened than Edison. Right. He probably saw like the connections with nature and with other beings. So he didn't really want to like market it too much and make a bunch of money and then like fry elephants on like electrical pads like Edison did. And so maybe he was like a little bit more like tuned in to like the real thing. But so all things arise in this Akashic space, this space of the mind. Akasha means space. And so the space of the mind, it's the ground of all being.
Have you ever got any ideas from meditating? No.
No, not really.
Nothing's ever came to you or popped out, been like, hey, this would be great.
Well, really, like a lot of like insights about Buddhism, I would get from my meditation, and then I would go and do my studies, and then I would find out that that's a thing. Which
is prevalent to what you're studying and what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't had any of that meditating, but I'm just wondering if you did.
Yeah.
So I've never had that in a meditation.
I don't have any good ideas. No. I just hear all these other good ideas. I'm like, oh, it's a good idea. I like that.
I kind of just clean the slate when I meditate.
Yeah. That's the best way.
Let me just focus on my breathing and right now.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm trying to do with this podcast is that Buddhism, again, it's coming to a new continent, to a new time of human evolution, and coming to a new time period and like a new culture. So the people that are in Buddhism right now are laying the foundation for hopefully like the next 1,000 years of history of human evolution. And the way I see it, that Buddhism has a major role to play in whether or not human beings destroy themselves, or if we come together and act like civilized, rational people.
So have you ever heard of a I guess a lama or anybody in Buddhism talk about reincarnation experience?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they remember it?
Yeah, all the time.
Like a past life?
Yeah.
Really?
So like the Dalai Lama, for instance, he was born, and then so that's the thing in Tibet. So we get these guys at Stanford Research Institute. They were doing this remote viewing studies and all this paranormal like research, right? And they were getting these great results, and they were writing them all down. Like, wow, this is fantastic. You guys are like nailing this psychic study stuff. These people had no training. They didn't like do this professionally. They were just like some scientists and then some test subjects that they basically were just people they knew. In Buddhism, you train to become a psychic. that's not the whole point, but it's a major thing that comes out of meditation is
Right.
these spiritual powers. So it's actually pretty common in these Tibetan groups with these great masters is that before they die, they're going to write a letter, be like, I will be born in this city with these people and you're going to, and at this time and come find me. And he'll leave that to his disciples. And then usually it's pretty far away. So that
Right.
because that's what's cool about Tibetan Buddhism is there's 4 different major schools of Tibetan Buddhism, and you'll have a great master from one school, but then he'll be reborn in a family that studies a different type of Tibetan Buddhism, and so then he'll go become a master of that Buddhism, and so it's like this really like cohesive type of culture, and so then they'll go find this kid, and then the kid will like be like 1 or 2 years old, and then he'll recognize his homie. And be like, what's up? Be like, what's up, bro? And then he's like, oh yeah.
They've never came back as an animal or something, and they went and visited an
happens.
animal.
Yeah, it happens too.
They really? What about an alien?
I'm sure that happened. I'm sure that's happened.
That's what I want to hear.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna get into aliens in a sec. So it's super common. So Tibet actually has a whole system of reincarnation where it's actually like they do like astrological divination to like find out where it's at. Sometimes the Lama will write a letter, and then they have the kid that will usually remember who they were and like what monastery they belong to and who their friends were. And then also they have this item test where they put out a bunch of the people's item, like the old master's items. There was like amongst a bunch of other items, and then the kid will select out. It's like these were my beads, this was my bell, this was my pouch.
And the innocence of a child is the best time to do that because it's before they're programmed with all that blockage shit.
Yeah, clean slate. And not only that, they were already enlightened before they died too. So they had a clean slate when they died even.
Right.
So that's kind of the idea of an enlightened being, is that you have complete mastery over your own mind. There's nothing, you even have mastery over your own death. You literally control the forces of life and death itself. That to me is
because I was going to ask that or talk about that, because you were talking about how the Buddhist said that he said pretty much essentially being a body, a human, is weakness. And
it just hurts.
Right. And to free free your consciousness. But then he was like, well, I don't want to die though, but I don't want to die. So you got to find that middle ground.
So that's the thing, is that no one dies. No one's ever died.
Right.
You will just come back,
move on,
and you'll move on to a new form. But the kind of the idea of Buddhism that gets misconstrued is that some types of Buddhism say that when Buddha died, he just disappeared, that he's just like no longer here.
So they don't believe in the one that's now, or
exactly. And but that's like one stream of Buddhism. Like most it's called, the other type of Buddhism that I follow is called Mahayana Buddhism, or universal vehicle Buddhism, because it's the Buddhism for everybody to become enlightened. It's universal, like throughout time and space. This is what the Buddhists teach, is that the Buddha was already everything when he was a Buddha, like walking around on earth. And so when he died, he didn't stop becoming or being everything.
Right.
So he might have dropped his physical form, but what he really is the primordial nature of all things in time and space. And so there's these kind of two aspects of Buddhism where it's like this corporeal, like in time, in space, physical, you can talk to it aspect of what a Buddha is. You know what I mean? Like you can get teachings from it, but there's also sort of like a universal spirit of what it is, kind of like the Trinity, like the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Like God incarnated as a human being, but then God is also the totality as well.
Right.
And so our Buddha, his name is Buddha Shakyamuni Siddhartha Gautama. Essentially, what I've heard said in a lot of sutras is that when Buddha died on this planet, he went to some other planet.
That's what I mean. There's an alien.
Yeah, so now he's an alien. So now he's now there's alien Buddha on some other alien planet.
No other Buddhist or Lama or anything has came out and said that I've talked to that one.
To our Buddha from 2,500 years ago. Not that I've heard of. They actually, they're actually pretty responsible with that kind of thing. They don't like go around like saying, I had this vision and I had this, like, because
is respectable.
They're respectable, and they know they have to talk to like scientists, and they don't. And really, that's what Americans do. Like, you see all types of like cult leaders, Scientologists, like
that's good, because they don't want to spread panic or they don't want to bring bad light to Buddhism. So I guess it is good to keep it to themselves. Because
Buddhism is hyper rational, and so as soon as you start talking about off planet, so that might be absolutely true that they did do that, but that has absolutely nothing to do with the causes of suffering.
Right.
So do you want to talk about the causes of suffering?
Enlighten me.
Okay. So when the Buddha first became enlightened, he went and found his 5 homies, and then he went to a place called the Deer Park, which is actually still called Deer Park in India. And he gave him what is called the first sermon. And it's called the Chatvari Arya Satyani. And it's called the 4 Noble Truths. You ever heard of the 4 Noble Truths? Okay. This is heavy shit. Okay. This is this is like the end all be all of Buddhism. Like, if you're a Buddhist, this is what you learn. This is what you study. This is the whole point. This is everything. So first noble truth, the first lesson that you need to know about life is that suffering exists. So suffering is called dukkha in Sanskrit. And dukkha, it literally translates to like a squeaky wheel. Like you have wheels on a cart and it just like doesn't roll right. Like it just doesn't, it's just like a bumpy ride. And so what it can translate to is like dissatisfactory, that you can't quench your thirst, that that it's painful, that it's uncomfortable. And I would say that that's like a noble truth that nobody needs to be taught. That's 100% everybody's experience on earth, is that it pretty much kind of sucks here.
Right. It hurts. Yep.
It hurts. Like even Barack Obama is like beloved by millions, like has millions of dollars now, is living in some mansion. He was the president of the United States, like this beloved Jesus figure. And even he has to deal with like the mental consequences of starting a war in Libya. Like, so he just has like blood on his hands. And like he did his best. Like I don't hate Barack. I don't blame him for too much, but he's got
no matter your situation, you're still suffering.
No matter your situation.
Even billionaires got problems, but obviously we don't know about, because I'm not a billionaire, so I don't have billionaire problems. But
like essentially what we do in this human incarnation is try everything we can do to cover up that sense of dissatisfaction that we feel. And so in Buddhism, it says there's 8 kinds of suffering. The first 4 are birth, old age, sickness, and death. And the next one is called just the pain, like physical pain, like just like fucking, like I got in a car accident when I was 17, broke my leg, super hurts. And so there's the next pain is called getting something that you don't want. And so that is essentially anything like getting fired, getting somebody farts in your face, like like talking to like some obnoxious person, and you're just like like. And so so even in Buddhism, it's called getting shot with a second arrow. And so you might, like, I got in my car accident and then I just got a broken leg, and then I also had the suffering of like, oh, my leg is broken,
right?
And like now I'm in the hospital, and now I can't skate, and now like, so there's the physical pain, and then there's also the mental pain that you kind of add on top of it. And so the Buddha said it's like getting shot with another arrow, and then just like right immediately you just get shot with another one, like right in the same spot, and you're like and so there's that. And then there's the what's called the pain, the suffering of change. And that is losing the things that you want. And so in my life, I have been to the funeral of 3 children. And that's just like,
that's fucked. Pretty tough. Yeah.
It's like to witness a parent losing their child is like, It's can't imagine it. I can't.
Nope, me neither.
Not to freak you
Don't
out,
want
like
to.
parents.
Don't
Not
want
to freak.
to.
I know. Don't. Yeah. So the suffering of change. A
Right.
billionaire losing all of their money, like the fucking
Right.
CEO of Enron or whatever.
Right.
Like thought he was riding high, just whatever it is.
And then went.
And so there's that, and then there's even like the suffering of like having $1 billion, and then you're just neurotic about it. And you're like, oh my god,
I can't. Yeah.
gotta make some more money, man. Like I gotta like starve more people because otherwise I won't have this $1 billion anymore.
What's
So
that guy that bought the AIDS pill or whatever and fucking hiked it up?
And then he
Fucking
bought
asshole.
the Wu-Tang CD.
Yeah, fucking asshole. What an asshole.
So that guy is experiencing the suffering of change.
Right.
He thinks that buying the Wu-Tang CD and being a total dick is going to make him happy.
Yep.
Utterly confused, utterly delusional. And so there's that. And then Buddha said the 8th kind of suffering is just called all-encompassing, all-pervasive suffering.
Mhm.
That just like no matter what you're doing, there's just like a sense of like kind of like confusion, like not knowing what's coming next, not
you're
really
living to
knowing
die or
what's
dying
that?
to live.
My-
'Cause you're
yeah,
living
my-
to die or dying to live.
am I just gonna like die? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, living to die and dying to live.
It's just
Yeah,
a
just
state of
confusion.
consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're really experiencing that when you just sit and are just quiet on board on the cushion. You will experience
Mhm.
that because there's nothing really happening. You're not doing anything, and yet you're just uncomfortable.
Right.
You're like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Nothing's actually wrong.
Nope.
You just are just
Stuck
going
with
through it.
myself. Stuck
Yeah.
with myself.
Yeah, and even in prison, solitary confinement is considered the highest form of torture.
It's kind of is torture.
Yeah, but I mean, into a meditator, you would just
Mhm.
meditate the whole time.
Right.
So, and if so there's like ways to cope with this. So that's the 8 types of suffering. Buddha said, this is what you should know. You should
Okay.
know suffering, and it's
Okay.
8 types of aspects. Dukkha, second kind, the cause of suffering. Hetu, the cause. Suffering has a cause.
Mhm.
And so there's the 3 poisons, which are greed, anger, and ignorance.
Mhm.
And those all have their their gradient scale of like how bad they are. Like you might have a little anger, a lot of anger. You might like be in traffic, or you might be Adolf Hitler writing Mein Kampf.
All right.
So like there's this whole scale, and then there's greed of just like, you might be like, just like whatever, like little very minor greed of grasping, and then there's like Bill Gates of like wanting to like patent a seed in India to stop hundreds of thousands of farmers from growing his fucking form of cotton or something like that.
Mhm.
Like just creepy greed that just goes
Mhm.
on. Like I'm tired of hearing about how great Bill Gates is. It's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so disturbing to me every time I hear it.
Mhm.
But anyway, and then there's the ignorance. And so there's this there's 2 types of ignorance. There's the ignorance, which is just not knowing, which is kind of innocence. Like basically we all got that going on, is we don't know the actual true situation of reality, which
Right.
to the Buddhist would be emptiness, which is the emptiness of physical objects, and then the emptiness of yourself or of your own mind, personal emptiness. And then there's also the second time of ignorance, which is actively knowing the wrong thing. So not only do you not know, but you think the incorrect thing on top of that. So it's like a double whammy of stupidity that
Definitely don't want that.
definitely don't want that. So that's the cause. That's the cause is that so let's take ourself for example. So we have like a megalomaniac, like let's just pick the obvious choice, which is Donald Trump.
Mhm.
And just everything is me, me, me. He's a me
Mhm.
monster. And that really appeals to like a lot of people because
Right.
they feel that same way about themselves. He's like the uber, like cool guy. He's like, he did it. Like he's got his name on a building.
Yeah.
He has $1 billion, had a TV show. He's got this great hair, and a sick tan and a hot wife.
Sick tan.
And he just did it. And everyone's like, wow, like I mean, I can't hate the guy because he did the thing that I want to do.
Right.
But the thing is, he caused a lot of suffering for a lot of people.
Right.
It's not really all him. Like I've heard it. I like to say that he's a symptom of the problem, not like the problem itself, as most Democrats would love to just like shout from the rooftops, like as if corruption had never happened until Donald Trump.
Right. This is never heard of.
Yeah. But so this megalomania, this attachment to yourself comes from the belief in the self in the first place. And so that's what Buddhism does, is it really examines this self. Like, what is it in me that I call this self? And if you really examine it, you're not going to find anything. Right. And so that kind of leaves you in this open space of like not really being able to cling onto your own idea anymore. But obviously Donald Trump has never thought that for 1 second. Never for a moment has he been like, maybe I don't actually exist. And maybe my needs aren't more important than other beings' needs.
He makes sure everybody knows that he exists, including himself.
So not only does he not know that Donald Trump doesn't exist, he actually thinks that it really, really does exist. And not only does he know it exists, he's going to make sure everybody else knows it too. And then I'm pretty sure even on his deathbed, he's going to be like, oh, fucking crushed it, bro. He's like, dude, I really did a great job. Like,
why not? Fucking, it's the American dream, right?
Yeah,
built up all that shit, did that shit. I'm the fucking man, right?
Exactly. It's the American dream.
Yeah.
And so, like a Ku Klux Klansman, he's like, never for one moment did he ever is like, maybe being white isn't a real thing. Like, maybe I don't know what an Aryan is. Maybe there's like Germans and Irish and French, and they're all kind of white, but nobody's really white.
Right.
Like, are Russians white? Are Greek people white? Like, it's not really.
But it could also, it's the same thing with like, the I don't want to be stereotypical too, but the tree hugging hippies.
Yes.
Like a tongue twister. You know what I mean? It's the same aspect of. I don't know why I made that a tongue twister, but I did.
It was dope because you're a spitter.
But they're just totally. I completely understand. They don't think about the aspect of I'm not and I am. It's almost being aware of self so much that you're selfless.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I mean? And like some people have it, some people don't.
Like really getting to know that selflessness and like becoming familiar with it. And then not only just knowing it like conceptually, but then you also make it a part of your being.
You practice it.
You practice it.
Yeah.
You
said, it's one thing just knowing it or saying, yeah, I understand that, but it's another thing actually, doing it.
And you can meditate on it too. So there's this great meditation that one of my favorite teachers named Robert Thurman, professor emeritus at Columbia University.
Great name, by the way.
Yeah. He's Uma Thurman's dad.
I just like the Robert part.
Oh, yeah. Me too. My grandpa's name was Robert.
There you go. Yeah. Shout out to your grandpa too.
Oh, Bob.
There's that self shit. That's what I'm talking about. That's what we're talking
Rob
about.
Is sick, bro. But
I'm down with the Robs.
Exactly. Okay. So this meditation that you do is you think back to a time in your life where somebody accused you of something that you didn't do. And you know that you didn't do it. And someone comes up to you and be like, you did this thing. And you're like, what? Me? No, I did not. I was over here at this point doing this thing. And so in that moment, you can see this self rise up and just become like the forefront of your consciousness. And so in Buddhism, it's called the object to be negated. And so you're finding this. So there it is. There's the thing. It's called self-grasping. There's the self that I think is really there. And then once you've seen that rise up and you're familiar with this idea, then you can start to like dissolve it. You can start to analyze it and like figure it out. And then you start to see when it comes up all the time.
So you got to get it out first.
Yeah, you have to flush it out. You have to like put a like a finger on it and be like, there it is again. And so you will see it all the time. Like my girl's so good at like saying things that just like dig my ego. I love it. She's so good at it. She's like my guru, because that's what a guru is that you have a spiritual teacher that watches you, and he's obviously way more advanced than you. And then as soon as he sees you on some type of trip, he smacks you down, or she smacks you
back
down
in your place.
Then just kind of, and will gently remind you,
right?
Like, take the puppy and put it back on the pee-pee pad. So that was cause. The cause of suffering is called grasping. Grasping due to ignorance due to not understanding the fundamental nature of reality, which is not only emptiness, like vast emptiness of like essentially anything that you think exists doesn't really exist. It looks like it exists, it seems like it exists, doesn't really exist. And then there's also the aspect of emptiness in relationship between you and others. And so mothers and their children totally understand this. This being came out of that body.
Right.
She's like, you are me. You don't understand. Like I literally had to cut you off of me. Like I literally am you. I made you with my own flesh, blood, and body. So women are automatically, immediately more spiritually advanced than men, which is kind of why Buddhism the Buddha taught like men more so than women.
I was going to ask that question because I don't really see any pictures of like, I mean, I know you don't call them monks in Buddhism or the Buddhism that you practice, bhikshus, but
bhikshus and bhikshunis.
I don't see females.
Oh, there's all kinds. So when you get into Buddhism, it's actually a vast majority female practitioners in Buddhism. Is when you go to almost any Dharma center, it's like 70% women and then like 25% men. Wow, and then maybe some trans people. All right. And so, it's actually way more. They're just smarter. They're just like more advanced than us.
Spiritually wise.
Spiritually wise. Yeah. And so grasping at the self, grasping at objects, thinking something's there that's not actually there, and then really attaching to it. And so you see this manifest in all kinds of ways. Essentially, everyone can see that. And so third noble truth, that was the first two. And that's just kind of basic reality. Like everyone can see that. And that's actually real wisdom to like see the cause of suffering. And you can really intuit that, like, attachments, greed, anger, stupidity. Of course, those things cause suffering. But what do you do? What do you do about it? Right. And like, is there another way to go about reality?
I'm guessing that's where 3 and 4 come in.
3 and 4 come in. Third noble, smart guy. Third noble truth is the truth of nirvana. Okay. It's actually called nirodho, which means extinction, which means you get rid of the causes of suffering. So since suffering has a cause, it also has an end, and it has a cause for an end. It's a teaching of cause and effect. So the cause of the end of suffering is called nirvana. And nirvana is obviously like a tainted word. We have carvana. Right. I saw Carl's Jr. that said burgervana.
Truvia or trivia or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah. And then the band Nirvana, where the main singer killed himself. That's a conspiracy in itself. I don't know.
Cobain, yes, it is.
I'm not so sure he killed himself, but it had some NK Ultra,
could be
things going on with that. But Nirvana, it's called the extinction of the causes of suffering. It's the extinction of ignorance. It's the ending of ignorance, the ending of anger, the ending of greed, and
away with your old self.
Away with the old self. And what is the cause of the ending of suffering? It's called the Noble Eightfold Path. And that's a list of 8 things. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. If your listeners are interested, it's on Google. There's books about it. And that's really how you enter the path, is that you follow this Noble Eightfold Path. Okay. And it's just a list of normal things that you do. So
that's number 4, or what's number 4 then?
That's number 4 is the ending of suffering. It's which is marga, the path to nirvana.
So that would almost be like to be in the now all the time.
In the now all the time.
Worry, don't take anything personal.
Don't take shit personally.
Don't worry about shit that hasn't happened or that's already gone.
Yep. Yeah. Study things, ask questions, be a sponge, be open-minded, be concentrated, be aware of what's going on around you. Yeah. So Buddha said, no one thing causes more suffering than unawareness.
Yeah.
And
Well, ignorance is bliss.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Another one of the horrific things that we say that's just so dumb.
Yeah.
We're just so good at just like fucking ourselves. And then being in the moment, being analytical, and being compassionate and being kind, and acknowledging the relationships between us all, acknowledging that we need to care about each other, that we're stuck on this planet together, and that when you die, you're not going to go anywhere. You're coming right back, and it might not be as a human.
It might not be as lovely as you got it right now.
You
either.
might not, yeah. You
or
might
it
not
might be better. Who knows?
You might not be as sexy as we are either.
Right.
It depends on your actions of thought.
Right.
Yeah.
So, do you have any good books or I know you have your own podcast, but any good books or podcasts or shows on Buddhism? Like what's your let's say your top 5, and it could be a mix in between books and podcasts.
So
that you would suggest for somebody who's
I'm gonna suggest authors.
Okay.
And so these are going to be like Asian names that probably you won't even be able to spell. But number one person you need to read is a person named Thich Nhat Hanh. So he is a Vietnamese Zen master who actually Martin Luther King nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize in the 1960s.
Wow.
And him and Martin Luther King were super homies. And they were like,
that's amazing.
They were peace warriors together. Yeah. Martin Luther King is one of my all-time heroes. When I was a kid, I memorized I Have a Dream speech.
Sick,
like he was a bodhisattva. Martin Luther King, he had a brick thrown at his head. He had a grenade thrown in his house. He had his family threatened and never raised a finger towards another being because he was a selfless being.
That's right.
He's what's called a bodhisattva, and he was a Christian, and he understood all the things that Buddhists understand, but from a different Christian perspective. He was a real person like that. So really, read Martin Luther King. Read Frederick Douglass, read Thich Nhat Hanh, and then I would say read, if you can grasp Thich Nhat, because Thich Nhat Hanh's so good because he really breaks it down in the humanistic way. He's not so technical.
Like a layman's term. Like
a really from the ground. He's so smart that way. He knew that Buddhism was coming to a new world, and so he had to put it into ways that we can apply to our life.
Yeah.
And so Thich Nhat Hanh, read Ram Dass. I don't know if you ever heard of Ram Dass. In the 1950s, he was a professor at Harvard. Okay. And then he was part of the acid movement of the early 60s. And then he knew that wasn't the way. So he went to India and found his guru, Neem Karoli Baba, and then came back to the United States essentially as a saint, as a Hindu master, and transformed all of the country and just transformed our whole parents' generation. Like he transformed, like the Beatles would not have happened without Ram Dass.
Wow.
So anything from Ram Dass, anything from Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama is like, he's also like from the heart. He's also like very humanistic, but he's really scholarly and he's really like scientific. And so it's almost like not boring, but it's academic when you read the Dalai Lama. So that's like the next step after that. Once you have the heart and once you have a practice and you want to learn more, pick up some Dalai Lama. Okay. And then if you actually want to become a Buddhist, you really get into it, you're like, I think this is for me. I want to get better. I want to like really grasp these concepts. That's when you read Robert Thurman. That's when you read that man. He's like the all-time master of American Buddhism. Nobody has a better grasp on the subject than him. All the Tibetans even bow down to Robert Thurman. He's like
he must have traveled abroad to study his stuff, huh?
Oh yeah. He went to India before Ram Dass did. So he went to India in his 20s and then found the Dalai Lama right away. He said he learned Tibetan fluently in 10 weeks.
Wow.
Fluently. So he said he had some past karma. Like he must have been a Tibetan first. Born in the US. He actually went to Harvard, left Harvard to go join the South American Revolution to try to like, because he was like with the shit. He was like, I want to make some difference in this world. And then they were like, no, dude, you weirdo. And then so he's like, oh, so then he found like spirituality, like Eastern philosophy, went to Tibet. Or went to India, found the Tibetans, because the Tibetans were already in India at that point. They had like hundreds of thousands of Tibetans fled China from the invasion of the Chinese, which
Mhm.
is, that's a whole nother story.
Right.
Chinese, one of the great Buddhist nations of all time.
Right.
The Chinese have been Buddhist for 1800 years.
See, because honestly, before tonight, that's where I thought it came from was Japanese or Chinese. I didn't know it was
The Chinese got it first. They were the first other like a non-Indian country to get Buddhism, and the Chinese Buddhism, it's crazy, bro. It's crazy. And they were doing it like full on all the way until 1950s, and then communism took over, and they really shit the bed.
Yeah.
They really lost it. But and so read Robert Thurman.
Okay.
You can't do better than that. And so there's like so many Buddhist teachers though. And Buddhism, it's karmic. So your relationship with Buddhism, if you want to get into it, it's always going to have to do with your circumstances. So like people, maybe even like the first book you pick up in the library might speak to you, or it's like or there's like a temple, like a center that's down the street or something. So just go look, open your eyes, look around, like Pac said, read the street signs.
There you go.
And it'll open up before you. You really just have to set your mind towards it, and the universe will meet you.
So what about your podcast?
Buddhaverse,
you have your own podcast, right?
Buddhaversepodcast.com. And I just like, I like half-ass try to talk about some concepts that I think I know some about, but I probably don't.
Now I listen to some of the stuff. It's pretty good.
Yeah. I need to make it more accessible. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to like introduce this subject to a modern audience, but in a way that's not like so Buddhist that you can't even like, because it's like a bunch of foreign words. That's the problem with it. It's all like Sanskrit, Chinese, Tibetan words.
It definitely gets my wheels spinning listening.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to figure that one out.
Okay.
I haven't been doing it long enough.
So it's a work in progress.
The work in progress.
It's all good.
But for you as a rapper, this show that you're doing, this Open Minds, it can only improve your rap practice.
Oh, absolutely.
Because rapping is such a practice.
Right. It is.
Like, I don't know if you used to freestyle or whatever, but
That's
there's no better, like, it's called samadhi, of like being in the moment, in the flow, being concentrated, and then watching your body do this thing, and then just hearing these sentences come out, and you don't know where it's coming from. That's like
being in that zone, dude.
Yeah. It's like that's it.
That's how I started. I never even wrote anything down or anything. I actually started because of a friend of mine in middle school and in early high school days. Him and his brothers on First Street, right where I grew up at, were actually really doing it. And they were tapped in with Doughy Rock when Doughy Rock was sick with it and all that. So Stefan had a song with them. He went by Triple Stack. And every day at school, or like when we ditch or something or whatever, we would be, chilling, hanging out, doing what high school kids do. And he'd be like, oh, somebody battle me. And it would always be me. So that's how I learned. That's like, I always liked rap music, but I started battling him. And of course I was complete trash, but as I battled him more and more, I got better and better. And then he started teaching me how to write, and I fucking learned how to write. And he passed away right before his 18th birthday. So that's what really made us get into rapping. Me, Nate, Bat, and Marty, and really Bat and Marty grabbed me up and was like, yo, we're doing this song for Stack. And I was like, for sure, I'm all in, bro, because I used to do that with Stack. So let's do it. And that's kind of how it started. So I never was really in it for like, oh, look at me, I'm Robbie Diesel type shit. It was more to keep Stack's name alive,
Yep.
So
that connection, that human connection. So this show that you're doing, it's like what Steve Martin, the comedian, said. If you want to be a good comedian, you need to read. You need to like expand your horizons. You need to take in information that you might not have gotten otherwise, so that you can share it with other people. And so, super proud of you, bro.
Thanks, bro. So how long you been doing this podcast for?
Like a year.
A year?
Just a year, yeah.
All right, right on. And you said that was at buddhaverse.com.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yep.
All right, man. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up with that, man. And
I think that's great. And thank you for letting me run my mouth and just bore you to death with technical terms.
My pleasure, bro. It's definitely not a bore. I mean, it's been 2 hours almost, and it feels like it was like 20 minutes, dude.
Oh yeah.
So definitely not a bore. Thank you for breaking the cherry, popping the cherry for my first show. Thanks to
Absolutely.
anybody tuning in, man. Like I said, you can tap in with Will on buddhaverse.com if you want to hear any more.
We didn't talk about aliens.
We're good, bro. We're good. We gonna have to get into that. We gonna have to get into that one of these days. You're gonna have to call me or something.
Please bring me on. I want to tell my aliens,
I
my
will,
UFO story.
Yeah, we can call. Dude, I'm gonna
do more. I'm gonna do more UFO research, and then
I'm gonna have call-ins and stuff like that with regular guests that I've had on. So I mean, don't even worry about it. We're gonna get tapped in.
And I should have prepared this, but I want to like bring you like some actual reincarnation stories of like not only like normal kids and people that like remember their reincarnation stories, but like the great masters.
Dude, I want to hear all about them. That's to me that's type of stuff interests me very much.
Yeah, because that's the Buddhist. It's an oral tradition, so it's just like the wisdom handed down from person to person. That's how it happens. So these stories are incredible. Can I actually read something that the Dalai Lama said?
Absolutely.
So just one quick paragraph, real quick. This is just to end it. Okay, we are thoroughly habituated to the mistaken conception that objects truly exist. But this conception has no valid foundation. The opposite of it is the realization that phenomenon do not inherently exist. And although we are not accustomed to this view, there are reasons that establish the absence of inherent existence of phenomenon. Hence, it has valid foundation. And through becoming familiar with the reasons establishing it, it is possible to generate the wisdom that is the opposite of ignorance. Whereas ignorance and the wisdom realizing the absence of inherent existence both have the same object of observation, any phenomenon, their mode of apprehension of that object is exactly opposite. Wisdom has a valid foundation and is well reasoned, whereas ignorance has no valid foundation and is mistaken with respect to what it is conceiving. Thus, we can understand from our own experience that by increasing the strength of wisdom, ignorance will weaken. So,
ladies and gentlemen, the Dalai Lama via Will Cosgrove. That was great.
Okay.
All right, brother, man. I appreciate you being on, dude. Have a blessed night, and I'll definitely be talking to you soon.
All the blessings to you and your show, bro, and your music career and your family.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
Take care, dog.
You too.
All right, man.